In a world that walks the line, there's a rare few who think outside the box together for the crew. To break the equations, not bound to any rule. Exposing to the world the universe is all view. It takes the talent of the craftsman, it takes the mind of the fool, to make the vision realize energy and matter in a duel. To a great, to a duel. The old man bills was running through his head. Cheryl probably got it hiding under his bed. Penny up to Annie making power for days. Don't listen to a word that the straight dope says. Might building batteries that power a ship. Victor comes and talking math as the water spiral dip. Sean chucking plasma volts a mile long. Sheila on the video making tone trumpet prongs. Bernie breaking matter, they said it couldn't be done. And to all the people in the chat, I know you're having fun. So it's time to spend your Saturday with the dope and old man Bills.
Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Nathan, otherwise known as Old Man Bill. Joe will be joining us in just a second here. Guys, got a great show for you today. I wanted to, real quick before we start, give a shout out real quick. Lightspeed's been working with me and he's been working on something very cool. We went through and co-authored a paper on how to make a correction formula for everything out there. And this is kind of what he has here, and I want to show this to you. It's so awesome. He's built this out, and what it is a sensor array, and it's hooked to a device that'll put it into your computer, and you're going to be able to see exactly what everything's doing in it. What's your eddy current, what's your magnetism, what's your rotational rate, what the speed of that rotation is, everything. This is just flat out amazing. So I just want to give props out there too. Robert, you're awesome, brother. We're going to have you back on, man, once I hook this thing up in my garage around my Graviflyer. This is going to be an amazing step in the right direction. So props to you, man. You did an awesome job on this. It looks amazing. Joe, what's up?
All man smokes is Friday.
Take a look at this thing, man, Joe.
I know, that is crazy. Excellent work, Robert.
Yeah, dude, he's got it really going on, man. And he created a whole computer program front for it and everything, so it'll be able to capture everything that we need. This is amazing.
I love it. That's the next level. It was the natural transition of being able to get better control over everything, and the control at the end of the day is going to be what takes every single one of these projects from, you know, just about there to there and beyond. It really is.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to be breaking down some film on the Graviflyer, dude. I'm so excited about this because to get Joe's perspective on it, it's going to be huge for us. And we have plenty of things that we discussed on it. But, and I know some things Joe wanted to put out there as well. It's really cool because it gives us true insight to really what's going on in the whole Graviflyer.
It really does. And, you know, we've understood how the gravity flyers work for some time, at least all in theory. And it just seems that as, everything develops and we see it in different ways and we understand what the relationship of the energy is and what the fields are doing and why they do it. I think that it comes a lot more clear as to exactly what needs to be done to make that project successful and the implications that everything else that we've done has on getting that thing to lift. And I think that Nathan and I had over the last few days especially really torn apart what it is that's going on, and we've been able to reveal some very, very incredible information, you know, that ties right into everything else and is the things that nobody has said. And, you know, if there's a reason to tune in today, just know you're going to hear things that nobody has said.
Yeah. Well, let's just start with the basic, okay?
Yeah, let's go. Let's tear it apart.
All right. This right here is his basic schematic. And what I want to do is show you the upper right portion of it. And it's basically where the piezo connects in. And if you can see it, we got the motors, they go up to that point, both of them. We got the piezo disc going right over the upper motor. You can see it right there. And it's going to the transformer. And that's the way the circuit builds out. What it doesn't show is the motor control connected to it like this does. So I know a lot of people say they're separate. And I just want to tell you that they're linked. And we found the link. And it makes perfect sense why it's there. It also makes sense to why it doesn't work without it being there. So I just wanted to show that, and then we'll go on to the next one. So give me a second on this. And then I'll pull up the next one. Let's see. Oh, we're going to have some fun here. Just find it real quick. And of course, it's not where I put it. Sorry about this. I thought it was
Yeah,
right
yeah.
there in
Well,
front of
while
me.
you're looking for it, let me just throw out there that the reason I was a little bit late and I missed the damn theme song that I love so much is because I had been working on a graph that later on, when it becomes relevant, we'll show you. But I was able to plot all that stuff out. Well, most of it, at least.
Nice.
And I sent it to you on Messenger. So, just know that you have that. So when we say, all right, let's look at the graph, we know what we're talking about later on.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay, I got it. Okay. So everybody knows this is Alexi's Graviflyer. I want you to pay close attention to something. Okay. As this thing lifts, understand two things. The motors are connected to the piezo disc. The Graviflyer itself is loose. It is not tight. This guy paid no attention to how tight it was between each post for a good reason. And you're going to notice something. It's going to be like there's a cruder film after a while. Back and to the left. Okay. It's going to go to the left and then come up and lift. It'll go to the left and come up and lift. So let's go ahead and watch it. And as we see right now, it has a tendency to want to move to our right as you're looking at it. You see that right there. It'll move back to the left in order to lift. Right there, it goes left, then goes up. Left, up, left, up, left, up. Goes to the left and up. This very specific motion is created for one reason. When you turn off both motors and you turn off the piezoelectric disc going on, the Graviflyer moves to the left. But because this thing has centrifugal force when the motors are on, it goes to the right. So interrupting both the motors and the piezo at the same time causes it to go left. Then it causes it to go up because we're changing the energy inside the bubble. Now, Joe, I want to let you take it from here and just tell people what's going on there.
Where to start? All right. Well, I'm going to start with what Nathan just said. Okay. And then work backwards a little bit, because in this is a very, very probable cause as to why nobody else has gotten the Graviflyer to lift. And any results that they did get also explains that. So it's a very interesting situation. the nature of what this is doing is it's giving, when they press the piezo disc and they pulse it, it stalls the engine. Okay. But the motion of the rotational forces are still there. And what that allows it to do is go from this forced state where it's building the field. Okay. And it allows the disc to actually reconcile a new differential that's occurring as it lifts, because the dampening has changed. And once that occurs, there's a new frequency that's achieved because it's no longer being dampened by the connection to the ground. And that's really the only way that the phase shift is able to occur, is if that stall happens, because it needs to allow the force that's about to take over actually take over. It can't be a driven force at that moment. There's degree of self-modulation that's ultimately going to occur. And then that ties into the next part of it, which is the ambient field interaction. So how the Graviflyer works is, like we've said all along, it creates its own fields, okay, which are interactive with the environment. Okay, and through this interaction with the environment, it's able to separate itself by inverting the field. Basically, it's running everything that's running in reverse, and able to create repulsion of itself to a certain degree because of that.
So,
Yes.
okay, so I just want to get at this a little bit. We're dealing with the angle of the Earth versus the angle of the Graviflyer in order for lift. And
Yeah.
it goes like this: based on where you are on the Earth is the degree you're going to need for lift. So if you're on the upper hemisphere, you're probably more like this. If you're down where I am in California, it's more like this. It's a set of degrees you need for lift in order to align yourself with the actual fields that are going on. And it comes down to this: if the field is going up, okay, and you're aligned like this, you now need to go like this so that you can go up. Okay.
Yeah. Some really, really smart guy that, you know, I deal with sometimes came up with this whole idea. And, you know, they just realized that in order for the energy exchanges to occur, they have to be parallel. And when you're sticking off of the side of the Earth and the Earth's axis is spinning counter to you, you're actually spinning around like this, not like this at that point. So when you put the Graviflyer on the ground, well, the Graviflyer's sticking off the side of the field, and the field geometry as it is swooping over it, because, you know, and down and over it in the northern hemisphere, like that, right? And it's in a state of expanse, and it's got a little bit of obviously a twist bias. So there's a few things going on, but the idea here is that the Earth's own fields, okay, are working actually not parallel to the Graviflyer as it is built. If you have your spinning disk and your central axis at 90 degrees up and down. So the way to compensate for that would be gyroscopically, and basically put it into a lock takeoff position with the axis facing the North Pole, and to have enough ground clearance for the disc to actually operate and rotate at that, at that angle of attack. And then basically, as soon as it starts to lift off, just have enough play where it could self-right itself, because at that point, the field is going to be what pulls toward it. See, it'll self-modulate at that point. Once it's off the ground, it's just a matter of getting it off the ground. You can't get it off the ground if your field geometry is running literally, cross of it in the first place. So that's the one of the big things. You need to be parallel of the field.
So when we say that, just understand this. It's just like putting a piece of aluminum foil on your table and then hitting it with high voltage. It sucks down to your table. It's at the wrong angle. At the right angle, you might get the right result. Just understand this. When you're dealing with anything aluminum, it has eddy currents in it as well. There are 3 flat discs that are creating 3 separate eddy current fields that are going on in this craft. I want to make sure you understand the positioning, though, because while you're dealing with this, you're also dealing with scalar. So you have a round field outside of your planet, right? And what you're trying to do is every single one of them goes by distance and it goes by frequency. So as it goes back, okay, it goes up at an angle. What it's doing is it's jumping frequency zones inside that scalar. So as it goes back, then goes up, just like that every time. And you could tell the angle that he goes at because that's the angle and height of the actual distance he travels. So you can go out there 1/2 base times height and do the triangle and figure out exactly the degrees of measurements he did it in on this craft, okay, based on where he is in the world. It's that simple as far as that goes, but the electrical system itself has to work with you in this. This is why you need to stall. This is why he left it loose, okay? When you're going one direction that's tight, it'll start to move to the right. As we look at it head on, it's probably the opposite way when you're standing in front of it. Just understand, it moves, and then as soon as you let off the power of the motors, it goes back the other way. We also know that this is the difference in the actual frequency. Why? Because the piezo disc is completely putting frequency upon the whole craft at all times when it's there. When we let off of it, it pushes up, okay? Why? Because it's changing the frequency in it from the environmental condition it's in right then and there to the new environmental condition over here. And it needs to be off in order to convert those two. So it's all working in conjunction together. As soon as it goes back and up, it's changing the environmental condition. The piezo goes back on. It has a new environmental condition around it and changes. But this ties into exactly how you build the field itself. The roundness of the Earth, okay, is right here. Your Graviflyer is on it. When you build the field, it is at the frequency of exactly where you are in position on top of the Earth. It's pulling in that energy wrapped around it, okay, in order to build the field. That's why it needs that slight tilt, go to one corner, then come up. It's loose, so we can get that tilt to work into it heavier and then come up. So we can get it off 2 legs, and then it'll right itself back up to normal position. Just
Right.
like that.
So right now, what you were seeing and what people have shown in the past is that when you almost get it, the thing tips over. And that's because it's falling in, but at the same time, it's fighting, it's getting fought, at the same time. So then what ends up happening is that as soon as it gets any bite, rather than it be able to go up, it ends up falling out of dampen because it's actually trying to pull one way. So because it's pulling one way, it's pulling to that polarity. It's actually trying to pull itself and force itself into that alignment. The problem is that at that point, once the leg or two breaks the ground, it's in an oscillatory situation where it needs to self-stabilize, okay, but it's still being somewhat dampened because it's contacting the ground. And every single time it contacts the ground, it ruins the resonance and the field and everything going on in it that's actually promoting it forcing itself into that situation in the first place. So it becomes self-defeating, and what you end up with is a Graviflyer that'll shake and get a leg off the ground, but then bang and it stops or flip over.
Mhm.
And I would guarantee you that every time it's flipping over to the north. No matter how you orient it initially, it's going to rotate itself and try to orientate itself correctly. And then once the fields build up strong enough, if that's how you're getting the differentials, is because it starts pulling in that direction. And if you just simply rectified that, for the angular momentum differential and make the field lines parallel at that point, then bang, there you go. And we talked about this when we were talking about gyroscopic and centrifugal forces and stuff, and how angular momentum, has tangible weight reduction and stability things. And if you ever seen a guy spinning, something on a stick or whatever, a tire on a stick that's spinning or whatever, and he's rotating it above his head, right? You notice it's forced rotation in one direction. You can't go the other way, right? Torsion. That's the torque from the torsion, right? And then you have the fact that because gravity pulls straight down to a point, okay? And it's an ever finer point. So you at the surface, you actually represent a larger area than the point that you're pulling toward, which keep that in mind with when you think about what gravity is, okay? It's relativistic in that regard, and it's downward center toward the center of the earth, okay? So the thing about it is that when you lift that wheel thing up, right, and you're spinning it, it's most efficient when it's at 90 degrees parallel to the earth because of gravity. That's where it should have its least amount of losses, but that tends to not be true. It tends to be most stable before it's able to do that, because you have to overcome another torque to get it upright. Why? Because of the rotation of the earth. It gets stuck in its stable form at an angle. Okay, so when you're turning the thing around, the thing is at an orbital angle, and that angle is directly relevant to the alignment with the pole.
So
Because
let me show this for you, Joe. Here, let me help you out. Now, this is the exact what you're trying to say.
Yes.
As soon as he spins it up, it basically has a rotation, and it's angled towards the north, right?
It's got a specific angle, okay, that he's able to achieve. And I've seen it in more extreme examples too, where it's like literally sticking out, and you could go like this, and it feels like nothing.
Well, I would show that, Joe, but the guy keeps knocking my videos.
I got you. Well, anyway, the idea there is that the axis of the handle that you're holding is at the angle of adjustment. That's where it's most stable. So what that ultimately means is that it's most stable in unstable configuration. Its most stable configuration, where it would be 90 degrees in parallel, however, okay, is unstable because it's going to want to fight to get back to that other stable zone. But then you have other forces working against you. At that angle, you have gravity working against you. Yeah. Whereas this angle, you don't have gravity working against you as much, because you're parallel to gravity, but not to the pole. So in order to rectify this, you need to have your alignment correct with the pole, so that everything goes good. If you're standing on top of the magnetic North Pole, or the Earth's axis, or whatever you want to think of it as, right? It would be spinning straight up and down 90 degrees parallel all day, anywhere within the polar cap. Okay. And that's the thing, is that there's tolerances here. Okay. So there's certain degrees of being off that is totally acceptable and it not have losses. But as soon as you cross out of that threshold, you have major losses. And the further you get away from the pole, okay, it starts growing exponentially because the diameter of the Earth, every few miles you drive south, the diameter of it goes up exponentially. So
Well,
it's
I want to point this out, Joe, and all that we're saying is it's doing the same thing. It's not using that angle for anything but lift. So just understand this. When it comes back to the left and then comes up, it's using that angle that we're talking about, right? But then when you hit the motors again, it stabilizes, right? And that's just centrifugal force right there. So it stabilizes on the centrifugal force. It lifts by the angle that Joe's talking about here. So every time that you take off you got to remember the piezo's on all the time. When you take it off, it's able to go by the lift factor. When you put it back on, it goes back to the stabilization factor. So it all coincides with exactly how this thing lifts off. And I'll show the video again. I think it's important to see it now that we've explained it a bit. So there you go. You can see it. And it's going to tend to go to the right. You can see it there. It's going back to the left right there. You hit the button. You can hit the button again right there and there. And then you hit it again there. You hit it again there. Look, it's predictable. I could put this thing on a stopwatch if I want to. This is exactly what he's doing. He's playing with the two earth fields. So you got to remember there's magnetism on one side and eddy current on the other. And they're
not
counter
to
to each
mention,
other.
sorry to pause you, but it's critical to the video as we're watching it. You could see the angular difference in the bottom plate. You could see the angular difference, okay, and you could see the variation as well that's occurring as it's moving through. That's because it's self-modulating itself in that particular alignment. And there's something very, very, very important to remember about this video and Alexei. He is from northern Russia. Okay? He doesn't like it because I said, right, there's a certain amount of tolerance that would be otherwise allowed. This amount of tolerance of a handful of degrees in either direction, is plenty in his circumstance, because of where he is. Right. But we're not there and nobody else is there. So when he gave out his specs, okay, in fact, you could see it literally going up and down, whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah.
From the base, okay. It's gapped. It's gappy as hell for that reason, because that's it allowed to self-modulate. You don't tell somebody that they go to replicate it, but they live in North Carolina. They're never going to get the effect. They never could. In a million years, they could build it. They could bring his Graviflyer to North Carolina. It wouldn't fly unless if he allowed for that.
Yeah.
Now the thing is that you need like 27 in New York where I am. You need something like between 26 and 27 or 28 degrees offset.
So just to prove your point a little bit, Joe, the bottom disc has a different angle than the center disc. The center disc and the upper disc are aligned. It looks like almost perfectly, but the lower disc isn't. Now, engineer would tell me I'm all off on how I'm doing this, but this goes to how you get it started to make it an ease of start. Why? Because you need that angle in the beginning and then it levels out. Okay, it always levels out where the magnets are because that's centrifugal force. If you ever held a disc in your hand with a motor, you know that. But this right here, again, easier way to lift, leave it loose, get the bottom to shift.
So because we live at a more extreme latitude, chances of that just simply working with that level of give is difficult because even though the fields that it has are stabilizing and allowing it to work with less, if any, resistance, any sort of dampening of the system is an instability. So the reality of it is it should probably be fixed in place, at that extreme angle because it is. But the thing is that once you get it up, you immediately can have a tensioner that as soon as the weight is off of it, it frees the mechanism to actually move at that point, the same as it is here, because the thing is, it will self-correct. And once it's up, it's up. You don't have to fix it in place to compensate for that any longer. And that's just sort of the reality of it, I'm pretty sure.
So I gotta tell this to people out there, and I see it come up in the chat a couple times. I've ignored it. I'll say it for this. I'm on the side that it works. I built the field in my garage. I understand exactly what it is. I understand the currents and all the energies going on. And quite frankly, man, I think anybody who tries to debunk it's wrong. I think they're completely wrong, completely misunderstanding the situation. It's why I'll have anti-gravity before you could ever in your dreams. So deal with that. That's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this should, with what we know now, we should be able to show this pretty shortly. Right. But there's already conversation with Nathan and I about the way forward, because one thing that we've acknowledged from the beginning was that the Graviflyer was never the way forward. It does what it does, it shows what it shows. It does so in, a certain way. And in that certain way, frankly, I mean, it's not everything that you want and need. It should be enough, but the thing is that we've discovered things at this point and made realizations and connections that the implications are that we would be able to do solid state gravity flyer that also has more characteristic effects. We'll say that this does the floaty thing, but what about all the other stuff? Well, Nathan and I have hashed out a way forward, as far as more impressive effects. Let's put it that way.
I want to show you, Joe, where he describes the ether. So I'm going to pull this video down and I'm going to bring that one up. Sorry. Go ahead, Joe. I'm just going to go scrolling through real quick and find. Well, no, I have it right here.
Okay.
So it's important to understand what he's talking about. I don't know if I have it at the right point, but we'll see.
Такого же плата вы увидите и в полуосвещенном помещении. И хорошо видно. Ну так вот, я тут начал проводить некоторые исследования, продолжаю тему гравилета Гребенникова. Хочу сказать кое-что. Некоторые люди, судя по вашим комментариям, разделились на два лагеря. Одни говорят, Гребенников шарлатан, вторые говорят, что он гений. Так вот, давайте не будем принимать ни ту, ни другую сторону, а просто возьмем, пройдем по цепочке и сделаем все, что сделал он. То есть построим гравилет. Потом уже либо докажем, либо опровергнем эту теорию. Итак, с чего начнем? Хочу сказать, что вот фотография, которую вы видели, когда Гребенников подпрыгивает на своем аппарате, все говорят, он подпрыгнул и сфотографировал в прыжке. Я тут, кстати, тоже в гараже пробовал на подобной этой швабру приставил, кстати, разобрал эту конструкцию, тоже попрыгал.
Well, he's talking Russian.
Что вот этот капюшон, который...
Let me just say, Deadfish.
Он не может...
He says, they work, I don't doubt it. It just doesn't look anything even close to what I saw.
Я уже начал
Don't you worry, buddy.
Сейчас я вам покажу.
Don't you worry, buddy.
Yeah.
Итак, блок панели у
We
меня уже
will
почти
impress
готовы.
you. It will take some time, but you will
Я
be impressed.
собирал их из этого металла, обрезки, которые у меня остались. Но это
Trying
не
to find the
главное, это
picture of
части
where he
вееров, которые у
said
него
it.
были в платформе. В нем еще Гребенников указывал, что у него там стояла типа сетка, и видите, вот эта сетка типа пчелиные. Вот помните, в своем
Here it
одном
is.
мелкие точки на черном фоне трансляции, а ты приглядись, вот эти маленькие точки, которые мигают, оно похоже как, знаете,
So
как
he's basically
телевизор,
telling you look
включаешь
at closer at the
темное,
dots.
когда нет
This is what
никаких
the ether
каналов,
looks
нет
like,
трансляции,
except for
какие-то
it's
белые
not
точки хаотически
this
мигают.
color.
Так вот,
It's
та же самая
shimmering.
субстанция и видно сейчас. Итак, сейчас возьмите, просто закройте руками лицо,
Well, that's what ether looks like
вы
when it's in
должны
a state of
увидеть какое-то, знаете,
exchange,
какие-то
you
мелкие
know?
точки
He's
на
trying to
черном
show
фоне,
you not
мелкие
a clear
белые
picture. It
точки, они
looks a
как
little
бы
fuzzy, right?
какая-то то ли
Just go with
сетка,
it.
то
I'm going
ли,
to
как,
show you
знаете,
why.
заполнено что-то
Okay.
веществом такое. Она слегка
And
пульсирует.
you'll
Вот
see
это.
it a little bit. Now, I don't
Мелкие
think you see it
хаотические
here.
точки.
Little
Так.
shimmers on the bed.
Это вроде как не дым, а вот как вот похоже на выключенное
Yeah.
изображение телевизора, но он мигает.
And
Я
you see them
попробую
in the air
вывести что-то
sometimes,
примерно
right?
такое. Как
I
вы
see
видите.
them all the time,
Итак, вот,
actually.
теперь
I used
откройте
to be able to
глаза,
see them when I
выключите в
was a
комнате
kid
свет. И в
angularly from
полупрозрачном
rooms. You know
See,
that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I used to be able to look at the corner of a room and literally see like it going like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on a minute. So let me switch this. The reason I say that is because we've seen this before. And I'll show you right here where it is. So if you take a look at this is a Tesla coil, okay? And I took out the background so you could see the energy field around it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look
The
at
warble.
the top one, it's right there.
Oh yeah, you can see it. And you see the warble.
You could see the energy right in the air. It has to do with how you're building the field around it. It's interacting with the ether. That's what he's trying to say, is this is why you use the outside energy of it, because you're building the impulse from the center of the Tesla coil, which is the eddy current around it, which makes perfect sense for the aluminum and the way the eddy currents would work around this. When you compress inside air inside of a fitness ball, that's what you get. You pressurize the gas, it builds out the fields on the inside, comes out to the outside layer of eddy current, and it interacts directly with the ether. That's exactly what these fields are doing.
All right. Yeah, so I want to tie a little bit of this together with other stuff that we've been talking about. And I don't want to get off of Graviflyer, but it's all relative to one another. Okay, I keep on saying parallel energy exchange. And then when we started today's episode off, we explained exactly why the parallel energy exchange has to occur in that fashion in order for you to have a manageable effect. Now, with RAV, in the energy exchange, okay, you have two different things, okay, which should attract, okay, but they're parallel, okay, and the way that they're also in a state of propagation, okay, is at each other, okay. So when you have two things that are opposite, so to speak, of one another, okay, they're parallel to each other, and they are also coming directly at each other. Well, they think that they're the same. So rather than them attract, the inverse occurs, and they repel. Okay, then they go along their merry way, and they find the other side, and then they loop back. Now, when they loop back, they start pressing in because they come back into proximity, okay, with the other side of the field, okay, which is the opposite as far as it's concerned itself. And then because it's then in a state of attraction, it crosses to finish the loop. So you have a feed going directly at each other. The two things come together and they go, nope, not today. They go their opposite way. They loop around and then they start pulled in and then they cross. And why is that significant? Because that is how, when you have quantity imbalance, which is the differential in itself of energy densities, okay, it creates an asymmetric exchange, but there's still an exchange that has to take place. Because it's on a free flow where every bit of potential is able to go through and so on and so forth, because it's met in a state of resistance through the intermedium. Where it crosses, it has, it's at that point that the magnetic fields are complete. Okay, so where are they complete? Well, there's multiple, and they all work with like gears. Where if you turn one gear, well, all the other gears turn too. So if you turn this gear faster, those gears turn faster. This is how it regulates the ratios once that's established. And what you find is that you have a cathodic bias magnetic field, you have an anodic bias magnetic field, then you have an anti-RAV magnetic field, and then you have a RAV magnetic field that all are conjoined like gears with one another. Okay, and then when all these turning cylinders, so to speak, right, are moving the rope of the magnetic field around this, hypothetical thing that I'm describing to you, right? Well, what occurs at the points of interaction where the fields start to drop off, okay, is more eddy currents, right? So then the eddy currents are the cylinders, okay? So those are the cylinders. Those are the gears or the pulleys that are pulling the belt, so to speak, right? It's like a pulley thing going on, and the eddy currents are the pulley thing. And the eddy currents are the difference between a magnetic component, okay, and a magnetic field. All right. Now, the funny thing is that the eddy currents, okay, are opposed to the magnetic field, but causally of the magnetic field, but not always, because other things other than magnetic fields can cause eddy currents. We know that. And if they're controlled and non-turbulent in their nature, meaning that they're recycling, okay, then they could actually become a precursor to a magnetic field as opposed to an emergent property of one.
Well, they're working together because as soon as you put a magnetic field and an eddy current together, you have convection. As soon as you have convection, you have entropy. As soon as you have entropy, you have lift. Basically on just the heat and cold factor alone. But I also want to say this to a guy in the chat, not realizing what's going on here. You cannot put 1,000,000 volts into a craft and stand in it. You can't put 1,000,000 amps in a craft and stand in it. You're misunderstanding the situation. You could build a field bubble out of 12 volts. You just have to multiply energy levels to get there, but you're going to get there. And it would be perfectly safe to be inside. The difference being is we're not using energy in the craft to fry you like you're thinking. We're using the energy of the earth to move you. That's the difference. That's what Joe's describing, the eddy currents, the way the earth moves, the angular direction. All that has to do with energy of the earth itself. You're just borrowing it on the outside of a bubble. And when you do that, it looks like a little penny store candy. There's a center, and it comes out with two vortexes, top and bottom. It's as simple as that. You're just riding the line of the magnetism as you go up, is what you're doing. And you're getting spin out of the eddy current.
All right, so check this out. This is where we're going to take this shit to the next level, all right? So I've talked about the formation of the RAV before, and this is in context again of the Graviflyer, and we'll get there, and it ties right into the energy fields, okay? But we've talked about the RAV formation. I've described before that when the magnetic fields collapse, okay, they when they form rather, okay, they turn toroidal, okay, they go from a two-dimensional rotation, okay, and then they turn parabolic, okay, and it's a sweep where one thing is surrounding the other. That's your vortex, and that vortex is like a diamond, and it pinches off, right, because of the compression. And when it pinches off, bang, there's your sphere. And once you have that sphere is your complete magnetic field, eddy currents, and all the whole 9 yards, etc. But how did that form in the first place? Well, the Kelvin-Helmholtz effect, okay, is how that formed. That's wave shearing. All right. It's a perturbation. All right. It creates a stuck perturbation that's in a form of spin. All right. That, by the way, is my theory on how electrons and all particles, which are basically electrons, all form. Okay. No matter what they are, that's story for another day. We'll go down that road later. But there's something critical to know is that once you have all of these magnetic fields, okay, that are all interlaced in a form of asymmetric energy exchange, okay, all the differentials are the formation of the eddy currents. The differentials, the asymmetric differentials, and the eddy currents, okay, are secondary cause, again, of Kelvin-Helmholtz effect. Now, what that means is that you have side vortices which occur on the side of RAV. Why is this significant to RAV? Why is it significant to Graviflyer using a RAV? Okay, meaning a solid state Graviflyer. Well, it's significant because the satellite that forms off of the RAV, okay, it forms directly off the immediate magnetic field of the RAV itself in a locked position. Okay, that's because there is particle accumulation that occurs at that very spot. Okay, then here's where, you know what?
I got it.
Hold on, watch this. Let me blow the smoke off of my pistol real quick. Okay, there's a second vortex that forms on the back end. The second vortex is where all the high energy density is stored in a vortex well. Okay. And then guess what it does? It's got a invisible feed of high energy to the RAV.
Oh, please let me show it.
And it's an exchange that occurs from the RAV to the magnetic field, gets sucked up into the vortex and then compressed. Okay, but it's in a state of potential. All right. Then when the RAV needs it, it takes it, it regulates it, and keeps it regular. Every so often it starts to run dry. You know what ends up happening? It goes and it goes and it goes and it gets sucked in. And one of two things happens when it gets sucked in. It either revives the RAV and the RAV will brighten up, okay, or the RAV will actually collapse and spit shit out. All right. That's it. It's an instability, but it's not. And what that vortex is called a Polar arcade.
Okay.
Okay. And it is not a three-dimensional storage. It is in a state of potential. Okay. Which explains why it appears as a lens flare, which is awesome. That's why it's dynamic. Is because every time you move in relation to it, a new cross-section of it is being revealed to you in relative proportion to its fourth dimensional self.
Nice.
Love it.
All right, Joe, check it out. This goes to your explanation. Why does the angle matter? take the Rav as the center and the core of the earth.
Mhm.
The way the magnetic field builds out is the exact line where that big bubble is, okay? You see this big bubble? That's the line. This right here is the energy field you're building around your Rav. Excuse me, around your Graviflyer. Right here. Why?
So all your high energy, and that was the point with the Graviflyer, your high
Because
energy is actually virtual and out of your immediate proximity through a fourth dimensional feed. Get
yeah,
your head on that.
so
That's crazy.
so hold on. Let me just explain this. You're not using the energy of the Graviflyer to create the field. You're creating the condition and the angle to pull the field in from the magnetic field that's already there. All you're doing is creating your little ball lightning as your field around it. That's what's going on here. That's why it uses the energy of the earth, not the energy inside your craft. That's why it doesn't kill you and light you up and make you dinner. Okay? It is creating it around you. It's using natural forces of it around you, which energy is not just volts and amps. Energy is everywhere and everything. We live in a sea of energy, not in a field of volts and amps. Understand that. Energy. Energy is different. This is why you can use one of the fields of the earth and directly the angle that you're coming off of the earth to get this right in order to follow the line of the field, in order to make your field around your Graviflyer work. And it'll work perfectly just that way without killing you on the inside by giving you all the energy you need. I fail to see the point of frying yourself in 1,000,000 volts. I really do. But when you see
Okay, so
so hold on, I gotta finish this. Because it's energy, it works on entropy, it works on heat, it works on cold, it works on all those factors that you're not considering. That's the point. It's energy, not just amps and volts.
definitely. I mean, I don't even think in terms of amps and volts, but although when we get to the chart, I guess some of it will come into play, but it doesn't really matter. So check this out about it, right? Nathan and I were talking, and in the conversation, I had a little bit of a realization about Rav inside of a quartz crystal, right? The fact is that it, although I've theorized and I believe still, that you can get a Rav inside of a solid clear quartz crystal and just have it there, okay? I realized that having it directly in the lattice is actually totally unnecessary. And if you were to take a naturally terminated piece of crystal clear quartz, okay, and you were to drill it out on either side, okay, and then on one side you just put a little bit of seed material, as we call it, intermedium material, clay or whatever have you, plug in the bottom. And then you were to just burrow out the center so it's a larger sphere, use a ball bit and a long ball bit so you could get in there and rotate around, you get it as good as reasonable. And then you could build the Rav right inside of the piece of quartz, and it's going to have the same pretty much effect without having to want to blow it to pieces. It's going to induce a very high frequency and extra voltage from the piezoelectric in resonance with whatever's being built. And aside from that, it's both its material and its electromagnetic properties, okay, would causally remove the ambient interference that is potentially occurring in general, which might actually render something like having to worry about your tilt isolation and shit like that, like totally a moot point, because you might actually be isolating the Rav at that point from the ambient fields. So it's able to just build out whatever it has to and just self-modulate in that regard by having free roam of the sphere itself. Then all you have to do is manipulate the axis of the crystal in order to, navigate what you're looking to do. And it would all still be relative to the poles, in terms of the axis vectoring, which is what we were talking about when Victor was on Monday, which was an excellent show, by the way. If you missed that, definitely go back and check that out, people. But yeah, there's big things here. Yeah.
Looking for a picture, Joe. Sorry.
All right, sure.
Okay. I want to show this, and I don't think that it's going to quite do it justice yet, but I want you to see something. Do you remember Sean building this? And he wanted to wind it. Okay. I love this because it comes into exactly what we're talking about with the earth and how it works. Okay. You see how it's like an orange. If we just rounded the top a little bit where the lines are, okay, just like an orange, but then I wound it like a motor. I'm just going to keep going like this, right? Up and down and all the way around. Then I go over and I say, okay, that's great. I'm going to remove the outside right here, this little ring that he put around it. I just want the core, just the green part, right? But then I wrap this around it. Okay? And I'm going this way. If I put aluminum on this, okay, well, I'm drawing a certain force to it. Just understand what I'm getting at here, Joe. You've probably already seen it. I'm going like this with magnetism, going like this with eddy current, okay? If that center was free to spin, what does it create? Creates a scalar from it. It's one of the most interesting things about a solid state. But where does the outside number 1 coil go? Well, let's go back to the green one. That round right there, that coil that he put around it, whether it be wrapped around like that or just normal wrapping of a coil, that's your number 1. That goes on the outside. Now you have the understanding of what's going on, because now you have a motor that runs. You have eddy current that runs. Magnetic field is going this way as the motor runs. And you also have an outside force like this, right dead in the center, just like the rings of a planet that create heat. The equator creates heat. On the outside, you have the rings that will create heat as well, because what are they? They're basically a ZVS connected to induction right there. So you just get induction heating, right? But that's the same principles that we're looking at here. So if you wanted solid state Graviflyer, there it is. There's your solid state. You're getting everything that you asked for, your eddy current, your scalar, you're getting rotation in the center of a motor, okay? It's building out the magnetic field to give you your scalar component as it rotates. Now it's the field of the magnets at distance, but it's also distance to temperature, because the further it gets out, the colder it gets. The closer to the center, the hotter the core, just like a motor. Just wanted to show you that.
All right, so I think this is a good transition into that graph that I sent you. Because if, some people think in theory, other people think in math. I guess I think in both. And I haven't had time to do the full analysis on what I've already created here, but it's providing a visual. All right. And I think you guys are going to both appreciate it and like it. And if, when I get all the stuff that I could say specifically about it, about the relationships, okay, you're going to be blown away. Right now, I very highly suggest when Nathan puts it on, for anybody interested, take a good screenshot of it, okay, and start looking at it for correlation, because I think that the people out there will be able to see it as well, but I need to start playing with the numbers.
Okay.
So what I did, well, I'll start explaining it while you do that. So what I did was I took good old Tesla 369, as we like to say, right? And the Rodin spiral math sequencing. We know that has exactly the field geometries at play that are ever repeating, and all of the things that we need and want. And what I did was a couple of things. The first thing I did was I changed it from a spiral or round, okay, to just a graph. I graphed it out as a wave. Okay.
Let me show it, Joe. I got to show the 369 so everybody knows what we're talking about.
Okay. So that's your spiral math 369, Rodin, whatever you want to call it. Okay. But the idea here is this: you're starting at 1 to 2 to 4, then to 8 to 7 to 5, and back to 1. Okay. And those are your primary currents, okay, that are caused for magnetism. All right. And they're reverse rotational. All right. Then you have your red lines, which are the 3, the 6, and the 9. When the 3 and the 6 activate, okay, they attach to the 9. The difference between the 3 and the 6, the median of this whole entire thing, is where you see that scalar bust in the middle, which is a 4.5. Because the 3 and the 6 have to activate it somewhere during the other sequencing, okay, you know that it's a pulse. Well, what's a pulse? A DC is a pulse. Okay. So you need to be able to make that correlation to understand that the primary sequence of 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, 1, okay, is an AC wave. Okay. And you know, what is emergent from it is this DC wave that actually pulses a second DC vector, because the creation of the 2, okay, creates the third. All right. So when the 2 cross, the third is created. And you'll see that in this chart. Now, I went one step further, and I probably shouldn't have initially. Okay. But what I also did was I inverted it and put it 180 degrees out of phase parallel. Okay. And what you're going to see here is all of the relationships between magnetism, AC, DC, the emergence of third vectors, when it pops out, and what your over unity looks like. That's what this chart shows. Okay. And again, I need to play with the numbers on the inverse side, because the inverse side is, hang on, rather than go by memory, I'll just, okay. So the inverse of it is a 9862359. Okay. So that's the inverse of it. The relationships and proportions are all different. And I understand all the relationships on the standard model of it, but the inverse is yet to be fully realized, and that's what I'm going to have to do. But every time we talk about ratios and relationships, proportions, okay, that data is all present in this chart. Okay. So it's just a matter of, you know, me being able to extrapolate it like I had for the one side already. Okay. Because I have most of those relationships already charted out. And as my conversation with multiple people, including Victor, who is like very, very good at stuff like this, has been like, yes, you've uncovered some stuff here. So this is, you know, it's good stuff. But what you're going to realize here is a few things. Okay. The first thing being that this inverse relationship, you know, its overall waveform as it's canceling out is of smaller and higher amplitude. Okay. And you have the same fluctuations occurring both on the AC and the DC side. Okay. And when you look at the geometries of the interactions, what you quickly realize is that it's both caduceus and helical. Okay. That the cancellation is not total or complete in any regard at any point. That it counterbalances everything, you know, and allows you to then move some of the points through modulation. Okay. And where you move those points, once this state is achieved, okay, is deterministic of the result. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, if you're steering a craft, you move the axis. Where you move the axis is the point moving, changes the proportional relationship, gives a bias to one side, and that's where you go. How fast? Instantly. Like ungodly instantly.
Yes.
You know, if you time gets crunched into this big, time gets crunched into this big because of the phasing and how the phase shifts work. This is a state of almost it's periods of still where time is ambiently outside of this passing, but it's paused almost briefly for you, but it's in sequence. It's like a flicker. So what that would appear to be is that the phase is coming in and out much more rapidly and readily than it typically does. So it manipulates the Planck scale. At that point, you're able to actually access these points if you amplify up to the point of the nodes. So what's the value? Very, very small. Okay, the value of these nodal points, okay, only falls 1 unit outside of where the amps already are in the existing waveform. Okay, so that's realistically it. Once you could achieve that, then all you have to do is create any sort of bias, and where you point that axis would be potentially could speed up the passage of time, or I don't want to say it, but I mean, what's opposite of if you're going forward fast?
Backwards fast.
You go backwards fast, maybe.
Well, I want to point this out to people too. When you look at the graph, it doesn't exactly look right, and there's a reason for it. When you convert AC to DC, it's 2 DC pulses for every 1 AC pulse. And it's significant for a reason, because AC is a slush. It moves back and forth. So every time you go over 2 DC waveforms, it creates the AC wave, but then it has to go back 1. And the reason it has to go back 1 is because it's a slush. Okay? So they go like this, they go back and forth. Okay? So you advance and then 1 back. Okay? And that's your AC. It always has to have the bounce back. Just understand that realigns where the points are as you do this. And it's like one of those little machines that go like this with the make sound, okay? But that's literally what you're doing here. You're going forward because you need a direction. You need a vector direction all the time. That's why it's 2 forward. It goes 1 back on top of that, but it doesn't change the direction of it. What happens here, though, is it'll turn into a sawtooth when you go negative. So when you go negative, the field itself goes up like this, right? So we went from square on 2 to rounded on 1 to sawtooth on the other, but everybody who deals with the sawtooth is literally dealing in negative energy, which means they're getting the cold energy field. Okay, just understand that for what it is. A Bedini spike is negative energy. How did he get it? The sawtooth, the massive spike in the energy, right? Every time. How did that happen? Because he backed it up.
Quick, Nathan. Important. So what Nathan's saying, okay, because, and you know what, on this chart, it's not even finished yet. I had to rush it to get Demon done in time. We talked about it earlier today, and I got it done. I don't think he expected me to have it done. Let's put it that way. Long and short is, I didn't connect the points, okay, of the spikes, okay. Now, if I connected the points of the spikes to that which they're causal, okay, what you'd realize is that it assumes retrocausality, okay, or precognition. No, I don't know. One or the other or both, okay? It's basically saying that emergent spike is predicted ahead of time and allowed to happen, okay, or that it goes back in time and occurs. But that's as a result of the slushing that Nathan is saying. So the having, first of all, the sawtooth in itself, if you look at its geometry and sort of what it's doing, it's absolutely an alternating current, okay? It's in flux. However, it is somewhat DC-like in what it's doing because of its proportions, okay? And how it builds up and then comes back down. It's like sweeping motion, okay? And the way that that interacts when it is a carrier for a direct current, you better hear me when I say this because I'm being fucking very, very, very clear right now. When the alternating current acts as a carrier for the direct current pulse, do you hear me? Okay, because there's reasons I'm saying it like this because it's like you've never heard this fucking before like this. Okay, you might have heard of carrier wave. Carrier wave, what? Nobody's ever said. I'm telling you, DC pulse carry is on the AC carrier wave, making its way to the spike. Okay, and you see it right here in the chart. Now, when it does that, and this is the interaction. It's again, you'll see that it would be retrocausal because you would see the points that are required for that red 9 dot up top all alone to occur has occurred before and after it. So it sits right in the middle. You see? And there's reasons for this because it's the 4.5 vector. That's what you don't see. You see, because the two DC pulses that are occurring, okay, allow for, with their interaction with the AC as a carrier, for the third vector to occur in a pulse modulated DC state between the 4.5 and the 9. Okay, so it's an emergent property of the two waveforms together. And I don't know how else to put it. There's no simple way to say it,
Okay, so number one, time emerges from energy is what it is. And that means that time is an emergent factor in space-time, which coincides exactly where we were before with light speed out there. And it makes perfect sense. But I got to tell you this. I'm going to take this down for a second and just say this. What it's doing is it's playing with the entropy in your system because it's playing with the heat and cold level of your system. Just understand this. Energy by itself, when you pull the negative E out of the battery or the negative side of the battery, it's cold. The positive side is hot. Okay? As we do sawtooth, we're pulling the cold. As we do regular sine wave, we're pulling both. And then in square wave, we're going up to one frequency, goes across, goes back down. Just understand this. If you want to manipulate the DC, you have to do it with a sine wave. The sine wave converts it and allows it to go like this, right? And then if you want the negative energy, you must create a spike, which is a sawtooth in the actual whole thing here. But it messes with entropy because it's messing with the temperature in it, which means it's also messing with scalar. Everything that you see in this is the secret of energy. It is literally the law of energy and how it works in every single system. Even if you don't think it's there because it's dormant, it shows up later in high voltage. And then when it gets a really super world level voltage, then it changes a little bit again. But it was all there in the beginning. You didn't know that you had a temperature differential, an entropy, a radiation level, along with your voltage and amperage in the system. But Tesla 369 already told you that when you mapped it out. It also told you that time is emergent from energy. Okay? That's what it is.
Well, what it also tells you is that even though there's an offset differential that throws the ratio off of a solid whole and leaves it at a fraction where these DC spikes happen to occur. Okay, where where they interact and the way in which they interact proportionally is at 45 degrees. Okay, so they are literally going 45 degrees, across the entire rest of the process that's going on. And when you see the combined pulse, okay, that occurs, even though you would consider it cancellation, right? It's a pulse every single time. So you get a little pulse and a big pulse and a little pulse and a big pulse. It's like a poo 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 poo. That's what it does. That's the sequence. But then there's more to it because then you have, yeah, you have a lot going on with it. I'm telling you, it's when you see what the DC is doing, and then you see what the third vector is doing, you start to put together a whole entire picture of all these parts working together simultaneously, both apart but also together. You see, because once you separate these differentials, does this sound familiar? Right? Once you separate these differentials and you put them both on opposite sides, okay, but then you let them combine in a controlled manner, okay, then you have your effect, okay. And what is the effect? It's however you situate it in a configuration. It's a stable plasma ball, it's anti-gravity, it's propulsion, it's a portal, it's all those things depending on how you configure them, and that's it. And what do you mean by how you configure them? Well, obviously there's going to just simply be more advantageous arrangements in order to achieve this that would be best suited to a particular cause. Like obviously, if you have a RAV and the RAV is this big and you want to like step in through a time portal, I don't know that a RAV this big is the way to go. There's probably another way to do it. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm not really going there, but you get the gist.
Well, okay. The RAV is built small, but it's built on energy level, not voltage and amperage like everybody thinks. So when you change the environment condition around it, like you put it in a vacuum chamber, we all know what happens to energy in a vacuum chamber. It grows, okay? The size of it expands. So that's an environmental condition. That's like putting a RAV in space. It wouldn't look like a RAV. It would look much bigger, okay? Just understand this. You have to change the environmental condition, and you have to change how thin the layers are around it in order to make a time portal. But I will say this, Joe. I just want to make sure I emphasize this point. The 369 is telling you that how energy is made and what processes it goes through and how to change it. And it's a secret Tesla knew for a long time.
It shows you all the proportions. It's what it shows you. This chart has we talk about the codes all the time, right? This chart, as far as I know, probably has most, if not all, of the proportions right there based on where you go in this chart. And if I know that might not make a lot of sense now, and again, I'm still decoding it a little bit myself, but I have a really good idea. We'll go into that, and then you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. You see, there's just certain number of relationships that exist that when you're like, okay, this is what the energy has to do, you look at that chart, and then you look at the numbers relative to one another, and that tells you what you need on both sides, and then what you get in the middle. So it's there, and you just need to see where the lines cross sometimes.
Okay.
And that's it.
Just let me say this, okay? So because we need to understand it. What are the relationships that are always said about a UFO? And you've got to understand them. One, it shuts off everything in your vehicle as it sits over you, and then your vehicle's able to move after it's gone. That is simply the radiation coming from the UFO itself. It messes with all the transistors that goes on in your vehicle. and it'll basically shut them off like an EMP, but it won't destroy them like an EMP. Then it allows them to come back on. Okay, that's exactly what's in one of these fields right here, and it goes in with the 369. It predicts it. Now,
Mhm.
another feature of what goes on in this all the time is it's creating a radiation patch. You go there and then everything looks dead, and then it comes back to life bigger sometimes, and sometimes it's just dead. Well, it depends on which radiation you were dealing with at the time. There's two different types. Most people only think they're one, but there is two different types. One will put the radiation in the ground, mess with the water level, and allow things to grow from it. One will come down and kill everything. Okay? Two different types of radiation. Both are put into this field. We're dealing with negative energy, so we're dealing with the eddy current, so we're dealing with the type of energy that's in this. And that becomes very evident when you can understand that you're creating convection inside the earth, which is pretty simple when you're dealing with an eddy current and magnetic field coming together, because we do it in stoves all the time. But it also makes sense why there would be, how do I say this, the right energy levels to do things, and how one field confines the other, because we all know that eddy current holds in a magnetic field, but if you put it on the magnetic field on the outside, it pushes it away. That's something that's not really well understood, but is exactly the type of energy that this thing predicts, and it's in your anti-gravity craft, in that bubble, okay? What I'm trying to say here is everything that you look for when a UFO comes over, we found. You want to go start up a missile silo that doesn't have any protection of this? Go right ahead. Okay, it's perfectly normal. You can do it. It has to do with radiation levels. Good luck on being alive on the other side of that. I wouldn't do it, but you could. Okay. You want to control your computer? Go over and put radiation around it. I bet you I could change every channel on your computer and hack every password. Okay.
Well, so that's one thing about this is it's works off. It has scalar component. We know this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see the scalar component emergent out of the multiple magnetic fields that occur. Okay, it has an energy store well. Okay, and we know that the main thing actually sucks the energy from the area, like, but it's doing so in a controlled way, right? That's where the side of diffusion generally comes in. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be that way, you see, because once you already have it, if you feed it faster, well, then it fills the well faster, etc. Well, if you collapse it, then the energy returns to where it came from. Does it sound familiar? Sound like 1985 Bearden, right? Well, yeah, because that's exactly how it works when you have an energy well where the energy is virtually stored fourth dimensionally over here. But guess what? Science said it was canceled, except science also said that there's a fucking energy well of potential. So get your story straight. Which is it? Oh, and it's got a feed directly, a quantum feed directly back to its source. Are you joking me? Like, this is accepted science, and like you can't help but sit there and laugh about how fucking stupid these people are for not correlating. They must be so goddamn cowardice of being shamed by their peers, that it's like hide in the hole and just fucking keep the paycheck coming, because at the end of the day you realize if you say the quiet part out loud, they're just going to tell you you're out of your mind, but they're the ones that said it, not me. I'm not the one that said it. Well, yes, I
Energy,
am.
hold on. Energy can't cancel, it compresses.
Well,
No,
it
hold on,
goes
hold
with
on.
the state of
No,
potential.
they always say this, and I just want to make sure we understand this. They say put the frequency at the same and it'll cancel itself, right? The problem is it doesn't. It compresses. So what are we looking at? It's a node. Okay, just understand this. It's the center of a node. You went from two waveforms to a center of a node. And what you did when you did that, okay, and just look at it. You have two C shapes, one on top of the other, that create your node. But what do you do when I wrap it on the top like a little piece of candy and open it up to a vortex? That's exactly what it does. You think it got rid of it. It didn't. It compressed it to a node. Okay? When it compressed it to a node, it went like this, little candy wrapping off to a vortex on the top and the bottom. And that's exactly what it did. It never cancels out because you cannot destroy energy. They wrote the law, then forgot the law when they say it cancels it out because it never cancels out. It goes into a different dimensional understanding in geometry, which creates this. Okay? Then it creates the vortex on both top and bottom, just like that. It's as simple as that. They got it wrong.
And then it just, yeah, it's wild because the math, the science, it's already figured out. It's already done, but the correlation, that's what they won't draw. Now, I mean, are we that smart that we figured out the correlation, or have other people figured out the correlation? And you know what I mean? And like, I don't think that we're that brilliant, so I'll probably side with the latter. But the fact is, nobody's talking about this. Nobody's talking about the relationships either, because you got to remember, as much as we want to sit there and say, you know what, it's a spaceship, so Earth doesn't matter because it's a spaceship. Guess what? Earth matters. That's where you are. Well, this dimension doesn't matter because, you know, there's other dimensional space that you can, okay, cool. But it's this dimension that you have to gain an access point to that other dimension. So it matters. You know, and you start to realize quickly that, as we said earlier, right, these eddy currents, these different field interactions, okay, the more gears and axis of motion, okay, that you add into a system is directly correlated to dimensionality, okay, as far as the physical construct is concerned. And then there's the other side of dimensionality, which is actual and geometric dimensionality. So one and the other are directly correlated, but one is motions and functions and how we can perceive it. The other is an actual place where something is that isn't here. And the reality is that we're seeing it, right? We're seeing it. And it's undeniable that these quantum feeds, if that's what the schmucks want to call it, so be it. I'll use their words: quantum tunneling, quantum feeds, entanglement. Well, yeah, that's all where it goes, because it all goes into these wells that are stored not here. And
okay, Joe, I got to show you this. Okay, I was talking earlier with Sean, and I showed him this. Sorry for the picture being so small on this one. This is the magnetic field, so we pretty much understand this already. Okay. Then we go from the magnetic field to the eddy currents. We get convection out of the two. We get scalar out of it. It shows exactly how the energy patterns work and which dimension they're in. Sorry. I'm sorry. I should have a better picture. They're bigger, but.
Well, do you have that picture that I sent you earlier about the Earth and the magnetic fields and the vortices and stuff? Because that's actually directly related to what I was talking about earlier, which was
this one right here.
I forget it. Oh yeah, what is it? Kelvin Helmholtz. Okay, so Kelvin Helmholtz. Well, that's one of them. So that has to do with the flare. So that's actually called a flare arcade. Okay, something that you can see. That is what that is, and we've seen the little pin. We've seen exactly this: the butt plug with the little pin coming out of it, and you know. And it's upper dimensional in its nature. You know, it's got a ball and it literally cups the ball, and then, you know, goes off into different states of compression. That's the heavy energy store. Okay, so this is the one that I was talking about. So in this, it's showing Earth and its magnetic field. Okay, and it's not showing the you know, the what do they call that? The Earth's bit larger field, which if we superimpose that on top of it, you'd be like, holy God. But regardless, you have Earth, which is analogous to the RAV in this case, okay? And then you have these two vortices, all right? One falls directly at the end of the Earth's magnetic field. All right. And what that does is it actually acts as an accumulation, like a cluster. Okay. A cluster of, well, there's two energy types. So depending on what you are and what it does, for us, it's a cold energy type. We have the moon because the surface of our Earth is solid. Okay. But when you're dealing with like a little fireball on the outside, right, like the RAV, well, the cluster is a little fireball, like the RAV, right? So that we have this satellite that literally forms in this secondary vortex locked in position, just like the moon, non-rotational, locked in position as the Earth spins around, etc. And then what do you have? Well, you have the second vortex, the back one. That one is the one that is known to contain the flare arcade. Okay. And the flare arcade is the high energy density store well. Okay. And what do you see there? What the hell is that black thing going right back to the Earth RAV thing? Oh, it feeds the Earth RAV thing.
Okay,
Cool.
hold on. I gotta show this, Joe, because it's the same thing we saw earlier. Oh, now it won't let me do it. Damn it. God, this is so frustrating sometimes. All right, go ahead. It bringing up something stupid won't let me show it.
Oh no, I mean that's all I'm saying is that literally. So the lens flare, okay, our flare arcade that we're able to see, the fourth dimensional energy well, it feeds off to the RAV, and it accumulates its energy from the outer reaches of the RAV's magnetic field on the anode side. So that's what you have is you have this relativistic energy well that can only be viewed under certain circumstances and as a fourth dimensional object, which is absolutely subject to the position and perspective in which it's viewed, depending on what cross section of it you get, which is why it's dynamic, like a lens flare would be. And it's really, really, really incredible to realize that that's actually there and feeding the RAV. And we've seen the RAV eat it. We've seen the RAV eat it. So we know that that's what it's doing. And when the RAV eats it, it either survives and grows and becomes more stable until the thing actually fills again right away. Okay. Or it collapses. And that does happen. And when it collapses, well, it spits gooply gop out like, like that and loses its stability. So these are the variables at play, but these are the forces at work. It's wild. What a time to be alive.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm so frustrated right now. It's not letting me show what I want to show you. Let's see if it does it now. There it is. Okay. We go back to this, Joe. I just want to point this out. What you just showed with the flare, look on the upper right. You could see clearly the outline of it. And then you see the other side where it builds out. Okay. Both things are going on. You get your flare, it builds out. Okay. This is what these things do repeatedly. It's not the mistake. It's what comes out of the sun itself. So it comes out of the earth itself. It's continuously showing what it's doing.
Continuously showing what it's doing. I agree. And all that bubble is in that flare is a four-dimensional vortex that you're seeing a slice of. That's the slice that you're getting. Sometimes you could see it with the inner content separate of the vortex, which shows you the separation of energy states that it still holds, even in that upper dimensional state. But, you could see that the RAV feeds it, through that magnetic field, the return is quantum and more direct. And you could see that right through the central axis. If you line up the middle of the two, you would notice it matches the angle, right,
So
of interaction. And you have the light, okay, which is acting differently and actually going into a prismatic state because it's being pushed out. Okay, it's being pushed out by the feed. All right, and that seems to be what's occurring.
yeah. Well, it also predicted the satellite.
It predicted the satellite and it predicted the flare, yeah, and then called it flare.
Yeah, it showed both, right? So you see the flare out there, you see the satellite, and you see the main structure of the Earth. And it predicts the same thing. It does it perfectly.
Yeah, and the funny thing is they just think it's like a well. But they just view it like oh yeah, it's a vortex and it's got a feed and it's like a well, but it's not like they don't give it any geometry or shape or anything like that because it doesn't tangibly have one unless you see it like this. Then you could tangibly see what bits and pieces of it are, and that's where it gets interesting.
Well, that's what's so great about the RAV because it's predicting everything. It's just in a small format. That's it. But it's showing you what energy does, and energy doesn't change in certain environments. Sorry. It just doesn't. And the way that they build out is based on how much oxygen is in the cathode. So I just don't think people understand this on the
hydrogen in the cathode, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't think people understand how this actually is going. They still think it's a part of your lens of your camera. It's not.
No.
It's
just captured that way.
The lens of your camera allows you to see what's actually going on. And the reason we know it's different is because we've actually had this thing where the light builds out into plasma and then combines with the RAV and then comes back out and builds back into light. We've seen the conversion. There's no lying to it anymore. There's no, hey, that's a useful thing. Hey, that's not something that exists. It's a physical state of what's going on when you see light become plasma.
Aaron says, do the RAV in Russia, check the angle. Good point. But what I said was a little bit, I think, more in tune, which is square your anode cathode reaction at 90 degrees and then adjust the entire reaction to the proper correct tilt for your latitude and adjust it to the proper correct tilt for your latitude and then make sure your axis is pointed north. Okay, because if you do that, this is not going to have to fight a whole bunch of forces at that point. And it might see, this is what I said the difference between this and the Graviflyer is. Why the Graviflyer doesn't work and why this does is because of the extraordinary energy density levels that are occurring to force it.
Yep.
Okay. So it's actually creating enough twist and torsion because of the arc, okay, and in its close proximity and its ability to burrow and channel, okay, but maintain itself during huge amounts of resistance because you got to remember it's going through an insulative material at first, okay.
Hold on, let's make this a little easier, Joe. Take this thing, take your 45-degree angle, okay? This is all you got to do. And just pull it back a little bit of distance so it doesn't shock you, but line up your anode and cathode on this level. Where the angle comes out in light is where you are degrees on the Earth, okay? Where that field is, where the line that you need to hit. So if it says 35, then that's where you're at. If it says 45, that's where you're at. This line of where the light breaks out on both sides to tell you where your line is in the earth. It's all lining up, and it's all lining up for a reason, because that's where the energy is, and that's where it needs the energy in order to make this type of thing. So as soon as you line up your anode and cathode straight up, you'll find your angle, just like
Yep.
that.
If you adjust to that angle, it will have to fight less, is the point.
Yeah.
Against the other ambient forces, which might be the difference between pushing it past the next threshold or not.
Yes.
And the next threshold you have to realize is greater field superconductivity. Okay. Right now there's isolated superconductivity.
Yes.
But if you're able to bring that into full swing, where it could then build out the fields ambiently because it's not working against the ambient fields, well, then now you've affected your environment with the ability of the superconductivity. You see, right now it's totally out of it's self-modulating and correcting and using a lot of its gusto to be able to maintain its stability.
Mm-hmm.
Do away with that factor, I mean, there you go.
So I just wanted to say real quick, limited state in the chat. I see your comments in the chat just fine. I don't know what somebody else is saying, but I'm seeing them all. So I also wanted to shout out Traveling Fools and just say hi. And we're going to be on there later tonight, man. It's going to be a fun show. We're going to be talking about different things like the pyramids and things like that. Just a bunch of cool history things and how it ties into everything. So that's pretty awesome. Get back to this on the Graviflyer there, Joe.
Yeah.
I want to say this. If we know that the field around with the RAV, we know the angle that we need for the thing to lift. We figured out that we are really close to having this right. What is the main problem what we're dealing with? Okay. The main problem is the distance between the fields. This is it. Okay. How far does the energy in the center and the energy of the outside outline go at? Okay. We're this far apart probably right now. What Robert's doing is putting together the program with the sensors to get us to go here. Okay. So just think of it like this. On the one we're dealing with, if we have two flow, let's just say they're at an angle, right? But both of them are going like this, and they're creating rocky grounds. They're giving me a really bad flow. I need to get it to laminar flow, okay, just like this. In order to do that, I need to decrease the distance here in between the two in order to get that. Once I have that, I have the higher energy state. I'm in a very poor, low energy state, and it's terrible. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to realign those fields with all the sensors around it and the program that Robert put in there so that we can calculate everything.
Funny thing is like what the Graviflyer does in essence is manipulate its own outer environment first, okay?
Mm-hmm.
To then create a gradient diffuse interaction with the environment. But then as the environment interacts with it, because it's a repulsive force, because it's opposite, okay, it ends up creating a repulsion, and that repulsion allows then the magnetic component of the Graviflyer itself, right, to actually build up, and the eddy currents too, right, and that's a big part of it. Is I say magnetic component, but I mean eddy currents when I say magnetic component, by the way. Okay, the same thing. The eddy currents actually, because they're convection type, okay, and it's repelling, add to the luminosity of the between the layers, so that there's actually the same thing like the RAV has in its own layers, which are sheath zones, okay, where it's literally taking the ambient environment and then pushing it out and then twisting it around it so that it works like a corkscrew, like a root supercharger. I keep on saying, right? Like the two things, they like kind of like lock in, and twisting one twists the other. Faster, 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 faster. More fast, more fast, faster, faster, right? And then also pushing it out though, so keeping it away. And then once you have that separation, okay, well, now you've broken locality. Now all you need to really do is put one opposite force of what you already have, and then you have a repulsion circumstance of yourself, and now you're up. And that's it. Once you're up and you've broken the locality and you're up. Now all you have to do is point. Because as soon as you change any little bit about it, you enter into a hyper slipstream. Okay? Because the broken locality, okay, where everything's going up, if you just tell it no this way, it's in superconductivity, but also being ripped by the forces that are with it too, because they're disconnected, but they're like attached. It's like, it's hard to explain that, but I know what I'm talking about. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's not coming out right though.
Gotcha. I just want to say thank you to Darren. He gifted 10 Old Man Builds memberships. Darren, you're
No, we
awesome,
must
brother.
be doing something right, man. Thank you, Darren. And Old Man memberships.
Right on, brother.
Yeah.
I think Joe and I talked about it. We're going to start posting the conversations we have off air onto that, and you guys are going to enjoy them. I want to say something as well, because I want to show you something. And Joe and I looked at this, and we know what it is. Okay? And this is an actual real video of anti-gravity. And I spoke to the guy many times, okay, on this. Let me just see if I can't make it a little bigger.
Same concept, different mechanism.
So I'll rewind it again in case you didn't see it. It just lifts straight up. It doesn't go to the side or anything like that, because it doesn't need to, because there's no weight in it. Okay. It's little motors. They're this small. They're for CD players. Okay. And it's basically two halves of a bowl. That's a piece of what do I want to call it? It's just paper bowl. That's all it is. I wish I could zoom in. I really do. But he'll show you the bowl and everything. I think it's hilarious because has the exact same mechanism that it's working on. It's an asymmetrical capacitor. That's it. He literally made an asymmetrical capacitor and spun it with the aluminum on the inside that creates the eddy currents that are going on.
So, to build and expand on this a little bit, he's spinning CDs on the inside, which is a very interesting way to distribute your energy, because what it's doing is it's counter-rotationally spreading static, okay, that does not have a major magnetic vectoring to it, okay? And then it's coming into dispersed contact with the aluminum strips that are inside of it. And the aluminum strips are then cause of the eddy currents. And by just the bowl's geometry, okay, the bowl's geometry along with the physical spin, okay, actually entices the field separation to occur and the static discharge, to be able to come off of it and break that locality. And what you notice, okay, is that, like Nathan said, it doesn't need to be tipped over, okay? It doesn't go left or right or have to modulate. Why? Well, the reason is because it's dispersing the energy in a different way in a geometry that allows it to self-organize. Okay, so when the field initiates and creates in the first place, it sets its polarity based on the Earth's axis in the first place, the way that it disperses. And there's a certain, I predict, although I'm not certain, that the prismatic effect of the CD material itself also plays a role, okay, in the frequency dispersion, because it has the ability to actually create like broadband coherence and then basically blast it out in some sort of coherent fashion as opposed to just arbitrarily.
Okay, I want to point this out. I gotta say it. Okay, it's in his inverter where he's getting the power, and you just gotta understand it in the way Joe and I said it in the 369. 2 forward, 1 back. He's creating an oscillation inside of it. Oh, Joe, I wanted to show you this. Remember that picture I told you earlier? We'll get to this, but this is what I keep seeing in my head. Okay.
I'm waiting for it to come on my big screen. There's a lag. Up there.
Oh,
it's like,
you didn't see it?
yep, I see. Oh yeah, it's like we've been saying all along, huh?
I've been seeing it forever, and I couldn't explain why until now. Okay, so let me go back to what I was saying. He's actually getting power from the inverter. Why? Because you set the inverter one way, okay, and then you stop it and you start it again, and it starts to oscillate, right? Why? Because it's going between an AC field and a DC field, okay? That's what he's doing with his inverter. Now just understand it in the terms we're talking about 369. 2 forward, 1 back. AC, DC, AC, DC. 2 separate from each other, but working alongside of each other based on the inverter he used. Now he's getting rotational spin on both sides. It's just that simple. This is as simple as it gets. Okay? It's the understanding of weight that's the Graviflyer. The understanding of anti-gravity has been right here the whole time. And I always said it, he's always 100% right on this. And he's in the Graviflyer group and has been telling us this for a long time. So, yeah, and he has other ones, and there's a reason for lift as well. So let me get out of this one. And I want you to see it because he deserves credit on it. Let me find it here. And it has to do with why lift occurs and stuff. So he sets this.
When you're done with that, by the way, put my chart back up. I wanted to say a couple things about it, but yeah, I'm with you.
He's creating a capacitance between the bottom and the rotating disc. He's got an eddy current, and then he's going to add capacitance between it. It's creating the same asymmetrical capacitor. And it's lifting up. You're wondering why it does it. There you go. That's simple. It's set by design. Anyway, for those of you who understand this is anti-gravity when you're looking at it. He's done it several different ways. He keeps showing you it. He keeps telling you it's simple, and it is. The reason we look for the Graviflyer is because it's the weight. We're lifting 3 pounds of metal. We're not lifting a little, paper plate here. We have to get heavier. But he showed that as well, and this is what freaks people out. He'd take a giant piece of aluminum, wrapped it around between 2 wires, top and bottom, where your DC, positive and negative, and he puts right in the center of it the Tesla coil. And then he goes over and he taps it on his voltage doubler, and the thing lifts in the air. That thing had to weigh over 1 pound, easy. But what did he learn? He just simply learned how the energies work together to move aluminum in AC inside of a magnetic field. One last thing I'll tell you. Gerald did this on one of his videos, and I have to give him major props on it. Okay. He did a double jump. So just understand this. He has a magnet at the bottom. He has his coil here. There's a rod going down the center just to hold the coil. He hit one frequency, it jumped. He hit a second frequency, and it jumped again. What did he do? He aligned where he was in the frequency zone. Hit it once, create a bubble underneath. Already has a bubble around this, okay, around his coil. He's running it in negative energy. That's what you're maybe not understanding. It's already in negative, so he's already created the field bubble around it. Now he has a bubble underneath. He simply jumps again and creates another bubble underneath that. Gerald figured it out as well. He has all the tools for anti-gravity.
So I want you to put up my chart again because now it's very relevant. So
okay.
This is both for anti-gravity, what I'm about to explain, but before we even go there, we'll do over unity. Okay, because I know that people were foaming at the mouth forever about over unity. And I want to explain how this exact waveform, okay, is over unity. And you'll see it. So when you have a sec, put it up.
There it is.
All right. So there's one thing I didn't mark on here, but I'll explain it to you and you'll get it. Okay. But what you'll see is that you see how there's the interaction between the DC and the AC. The DC is at a smaller amplitude, okay, and at the same pulse rate analogous to the frequency. Obviously, it doesn't have frequency, but it's at the same pulse rate. You get one, lower pulse and one higher pulse for every sine wave, okay, and that's how it occurs, both in the 369 and the inverse. Okay. Now, when you add the inverse, this is where it gets crazy. All right. What you end up with is these, the larger and smaller wave clusters. Okay. And what you notice is the smaller ones. Okay. They show you the frequency is consistent. Okay. But the amplitude is less, okay? Except when you go to the red marks all the way at the top, okay, you notice it's giving you a 9 pulse, okay? That's an amplitude of 4.5 to 9, okay? And then an inverse pulse, which I didn't map out yet, but it would be similar in size, just offset ever so slightly. So you get another secondary waveform, okay, that occurs that's very high frequency, very high amplitude, but the pulse is it's not constant at a constant frequency. So it's like a drum beat where it's like duh, 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 duh. But something like that, but like you get it. You actually get 2 big pulses very quickly and then a pause, right? But those 2 big pulses that you get can easily be captured, okay? And they are emergent from the system and neither affected the amount of energy that was occurring in this at all. So it's still fully available for use. Okay, and it went to no waste, and is also probably in a state of superconductivity. So, like your efficiency is like, you're not having losses. So you can literally catch these 2 pulses, ba-boom, 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 and it's the sum of it, okay, is actually, I'm pretty sure if I work the numbers, about the same or more than the entire combination of the two waves that formed it.
Okay, hold on. Let me get this visual in people's heads. Think the monks putting the rock from the ground to the ledge. When Joe starts talking about the music here, because it matters. You get the beat rate, okay? But then you start getting the horns in there. Oh, you got to do the sound effects, Joe.
Ba-bum, da, 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 ba-bum, da, 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 ba-bum, da, da, da. You know, it's the ba-boom that's giving you the thing, but that's happening very quick, and then a bigger pause in between while it's all playing out the cycle to do it again. You know, and again, there's no loss to the system. It's emergent from the system, can be captured, is tangible, and is mapped out in there. And it's just massive high amperage DC pulse at that point. Yeah, and again, if you were to measure it between the frequency and the amplitude, right, you would notice that proportionally, it's probably like the sum of the whole, or so it's a good proportion is the point.
Okay,
Right.
but now do the horns, because the horns are like the AC in the system.
Okay, so the analingus, that I gave,
Spelled it
Nathan
one
earlier.
time.
Yes, I gave Nathan analingus earlier. That's terrible. No, I didn't. I didn't just say that on the internet. Anyway.
No, you did not. The truth about that story was, Joe always says analogous, and I spelled it wrong and looked up the definition, and all I saw was pictures of things that you didn't want to see. Okay, is what I saw, and I asked Joe about it, and he goes, "No, this is how you spell it," and he laughs at me the whole time. You know what I mean? Thinking I thought it was something totally different for months.
Dude thought I was talking about chomping rectum. Anyway, so yeah, the analog to it is like a saxophone, right? If you're gonna play in A and then you're gonna play in F, right? It would be A F, A F, A F, A F, as fuck, A F, right? Well, but if you had either like a trombone, like a rusty trombone, especially, seeing as we're talking about analingus and all, or like one of those whistles, okay? Well, going from A to F would be like, right? So you have your saxophone that's like just playing DC, right? And then your that's playing the AC. Well, when you put them together, then you get the combo of the both, right?
Mhm.
There's just a whole bunch of shit going on between the same notes with the AC, whereas the DC is just more here's what it is, right? And it's one of these things that when they're together, there's this offset thing that occurs, and that's what you see in the chart. So, when they're together, they have certain points of overlap and amplification and whatnot, and other parts of where it starts to drop off, but it stays consistent. And it at a certain point where those two things cross, if it's perfectly aligned, well, then you have an emergent property that occurs, the crossing of the vectors.
Yes.
So once the vectors cross, well, that's a magnetic component, right? You could see the magnetism in this. First of all, when I look at this, I don't see lines. I see it dimensionally. I could tell the direction that it's swooping and where it's changing and coming back directionally, swooping and changing back directionally. You notice that they're inverse and headed the same direction. The direction of propagation is the same as the Earth, right? The direction of the propagation is the same with the eddy currents. Everything else is what the inverse is, but at the middle, they're all going left. that's the one regular thing, is that in the middle they're all going left, and it's the same thing in this. When when they cross at the median point, which for the 9 is 4.5, right? Well, you notice the significance of the 4.5, what the pulse is, and the idea that third vector occurs. But you draw a line between the 9 and the 4.5, you realize that you have a helical, first of all, a double helix wrapped around another helix on the inside. Starts to look familiar if you look at it from the top. But then what you have is an orbiting situation as well. All right, and this is what that looks like dimensionally. It's very interesting. Like I said, and it's got all the ratios and relationships. So you know that when you have X amount parts AC, okay, that it'll act as a carrier wave for a DC pulse at all these certain proportions, and that's when you get your emergent values. Obviously a lot of geometry in here as well. In fact, I'm pretty sure that I see the Freemason symbol directly in the middle of the entire thing, if I'm not mistaken. Looks like a square and a compass to me. But who am I? Because who would have figured that two things riding in the middle of a whole bunch of other stuff at a 45-degree interactive angle, 180 degrees out of phase would mean anything. Not any guys that are laying bricks, that's for sure. But
Well, here's the whole thing, guys. So I just want to point this out. You got to remember, it's energy you're converting. I can't say it enough. It's how it interacts with the environment. That's why sound and that energy will create the same things that your fields do. It'll create the same gravitational effects. That's why it works together, because you're not in the medium of volts and amps. That's where people get lost. They think, God, if I could just create enough volts and amps, I can lift something. It's never going to happen that way. It's all the other energies that are taking place that you did not know were there because they didn't put it in when they put in Maxwell's equations. Faraday knew what he was doing. He was doing something on a round sphere, and Faraday drew donuts. I'm sorry, it's wrong. He did it wrong. I just got, because he did it wrong, we all get it wrong. And you don't understand energy properly because of it.
Quiet part out loud, Nathan. It's time. As if this hasn't been illuminating enough, huh?
Yeah.
Well, trick question, people. Where does the Earth's energy come from? It's a loaded question, and it's a trick question. I mean, most people would say, well, the sun, the radiation from the sun, it warms, etc. Well, what have I been saying all along? This high energy potential in a state of diffusion. Okay. Well, what's the Earth? Well, the Earth is maybe a lower energy potential, but a much higher energy density. It's concentrated, real concentrated. And the equilibrium zone between the two fields is not at the crust, it's below the surface. Shh, tell anyone. Okay, so you have this interactive field exchange, this energy exchange between diffuse radiation energy of the crust of the Earth, okay, going through the crust of the Earth and then interacting and intertwining and exchanging, get this, exchanging with the diffuse energy of the sun. You see, the emergence of Earth's magnetic field, okay, is a symbiotic relationship between the sun and the Earth in an asymmetric energy exchange between a high potential in a state of diffusion and a lower potential in a state of concentration, with back-end wells to feed the whole process on both ends, because you can't just have it on one side, okay? So whatever's going on here is going on there. Now, why is the moon solid? Well, for the same reason that the Earth is solid with a hot core, okay? Because we're on the other side, okay, of that equilibrium process. You see, The equilibrium process is occurring deeper in. So we're in a solid zone where we are with a hot core instead of a cold center with a hot outer, which is probably what the sun is. Like under a great amount of compression, which people are like, compression, heat. Well, no, when you compress gas, it gets cold. The last I checked, the last I'd known, the last I heard, they said it was hydrogen. Is it? Beats the hell out of me, probably is. But compressed hydrogen is cold. Okay. So just saying. So there's this whole energy exchange thing that occurs. And it's not typical of what we think, because we have the energy, the highest energy concentration right below our feet. Now, why gravity? Well, because we have an asymmetric energy exchange, okay, with matter involved. So there's mass involved. Now, last I knew, in this asymmetric exchange, it's a pull situation, right? You have the higher energy density pulling the more diffuse energy in, pulling it in and then shitting it out. But that's another story for another day, but pulling it in, all right? And as it's pulling in this energy density, well, first of all, that creates a vectoring effect. And then you take into the fact that it's in a diffuse state. Well, what the fuck does that mean, and why does it matter? Well, let me tell you. Because that means that our magnetic zone, okay, has a certain massive diameter, okay? And then much further in, okay, like here, well, our atmosphere, that's the end of our atmosphere at that point, okay? And that's got a huge freaking diameter, okay? And then here's this little ball of crazy shit in the middle with a whole bunch of morons living on it and whatever, dinosaurs and shit, and who knows, whatever, it doesn't matter, all right? And they're still in the diffuse zone because that's not where the equilibrium is. See, the equilibrium's further into the Earth's crust, okay? So you're still in the diffuse zone. And you have this situation that occurs where the highest energy density is at the core of the Earth, which is basically a small zone compared to anything else that we're discussing. Okay, that means that it is one point on this center, okay, that outwardly expands exponentially, okay? And you could do this at any point of the system and say, relatively, you have, for your 3 foot by 3 foot section that you have on Earth as you're standing up, if you were to draw a square around yourself, okay, you probably have 2 square miles of atmosphere for your 3 foot by 3 foot square, and you probably have 1,000 or 5,000 square, miles squared, all right, of magnetic field above you. All right, for every 3 by 3 square on the surface. And then when you bring that down, okay, what you realize is that that represents a percentage of this whole thing each and every time, and it's proportional because it's relative, okay? So if it's 1/1,000,000,000 of a percent on the surface, it's 1/1,000,000,000 of a percent here to there to there to there. And then you can pinpoint the spot directly. If you were to draw an axis straight through your body, dead to the center, okay? You would be able to pinpoint a very specific spot. And when you zoomed in past the atomic level and realized what a trillionth of it or a quadrillionth of it was, to the power of whatever, that is actually your representational spot on the core of the Earth. It's this little, that's it. But that represents thousands of miles of all sorts of crap above it and everything in between. So why gravity? Because everything is coming down and related to that one spot in the center. Everything. Everything is related to that one spot in the center and is in a fight that diffuses out because the energy state is so high that it keeps it away.
Well,
You see, that's it. It's the energy exchange rate. If you do away with the energy exchange rate and this starts winning or that starts winning, the gravity situation changes immediately.
There's a different pressure gradient. You know this if you took diving classes or you went up in the air. There's a pressure gradient that happens. That's part of gravity. But you got to understand gravity is not one thing. You can't just say magnetism is gravity because it doesn't work. Again, pressure differential, the magnetic field. Then you got to get into the eddy current field. All of them combine to make gravity. Gravity is emergent from all the factors around it. It's not a field upon itself. You just have to understand that. And the more you try to define it in one fashion, the more you screw up the whole thing.
No, that's why I said it has nothing to do. And you know what? Forgive me, because it's not that I disagree with you, but the words I think are, I don't agree with the words you're saying though. All right. The thing is, it's the energy exchange. It has nothing to do with the pressure differential in that particular case, because it has to do with the energy exchange. Okay. And the nature of the ratio of the diffuse energy versus the high density energy in that exchange, where it falls and what you're in relation to it. So again, because there's this situation where these fields that are emergent from this interaction and this exchange, and they extend out, and there's a relativistic um, a surface area difference, okay, for lack of a better way to put it. I mean, that's what it is, though. Okay, between the outreach, the furthest outreach of our magnetic field as you come in, and then as you get to our atmosphere, and then as you come in, you get to the crust, and then as you come in, you get to your diffuse zone beneath the crust where the mantle starts. That's where the energy shift becomes from, it's more the energy density is able to stave off the diffuse higher potential energy at that point, at that particular zone in that particular ratio. That's where the equilibrium is, which, by the way, is where the matter is formed. So Sabine Hassenfelder said something great the other day about the creation of matter initially, and I actually agreed to a certain extent, with how she came up with the origins of matter in the first place. However, what she failed to recognize, in my opinion, is that I believe that these processes occur transmutably based on environmental conditions in this equilibrium zone, and don't need to be prerequisite in their atomic structure present, in order to be, elementally available on Earth. So there's this whole thing. But again, with gravity, it's the energy exchange and where you fall in that zone, you see. And because we all represent a larger portion up here of what's a very small part down there, in terms of the energy exchange, once you plug in all the variables, you realize that that's the emergent property of gravity. It is that exchange rate. Now, if the sun all of a sudden started, overpowering the core of the Earth, okay, well, that ratio changes, gravity changes, and vice versa. If everything starts going molten around us, guess what? It all changes.
Well, okay. I gotta say this. 8th Center says it's consciousness that I'll put it up here. It isn't flowing, it's consciousness. So, and he's talking about the ether because he's responding to Bog Irish right here. Here's the thing.
Yeah, that's a long one. We're not going there today for me. Fine.
Well, I just got to tell you this. We have a field around us. There's a field around the Earth. That means that there's two different zones going on. And Joe and I were talking about this earlier. Meditation in the zone you have, although done a bit differently, has the same causational effect as the energy around the planet and how it's done. So, can you change time with either one? Sure. Do you just need the right mechanism? Sure. Both of them are going to happen.
Darren has the $1 million question. Isn't mass irrelevant once the drive and lift bubble is achieved? That is another loaded question, and I'll explain to you why. It's because of the differentials. Okay, as we've said, there's this energy exchange that occurs in all of these processes. Okay, and the differentiating factor, okay, is often mass. All right. So what's in a diffuse state versus what's in a more concentrated state and how that's able to self-organize, okay, is dependent on being able to reach the ratio levels, okay, of the diffuse energy and the concentrated energy. When your diffuse energy is so heavy, massive, okay, well, your energy is in a more diffuse state, just like, like anything else. If you have a very, very large cast iron pan, it takes a lot longer than heating up, a much lighter aluminum pan, right? Holds heat a lot longer too, but, it takes a lot longer to heat up. So the point there is that you would need your density levels of the diffuse energy to be able to fall within the ratio. So it would have to reach a certain level of saturation before that level could be achieved. Now, in some instances, there may not be enough energy being input into the system to reach those ratios to achieve what would then cause your field bubble. So it becomes a but for situation. So it's like, once it's achieved, though, you could load it up with all sorts of shit, okay, because it is achieved, okay, but achieving it with the higher mass becomes difficult for the reason of the diffusion. Now, on the other hand, I mean, if it was infinitely dense, that would throw your other ratios all over the place and way out of whack. Those huge differentials would actually assist you in potentially reaching the other potentials, but the practicality of that doesn't seem to be there, because usually the denser materials don't have the material properties, needed to, do what we need. So aluminum tends to be the way.
I think in the end, if you created the field properly, weight doesn't matter. It won't. But think about what you're doing. You're creating gravity inside of a craft where your center point is inside the bubble. The center point of the Earth is in its own center point of the bubble. You're now separated from it. You gained all the energy you needed to in a self-contained thing. That's like they say ball lightning is. And if that's correct, and it'll hold it because you're still applying energy to it, yet you don't have to apply the energy on the outside the same way anymore. You just have to apply the energy on the inside, so it's self-contained. If that's the case, because like the Graviflyer is the RAV inside out, you're building the energy from the center outward. And it's using the fields of energy in the earth to build it, not sustain it. Therefore,
Right.
I don't think that the weight's going to matter if you build the thing properly. Again, like Joe said, there's a lot of factors in building it properly. It just doesn't happen. You have to do it properly. But I would say it wouldn't matter one bit what it weighed. As a matter of fact, I think the heavier it is, the better it's going to be in that field, as long as it has the correct materials. And the reason we use aluminum a lot is because it's the fastest thing to eddy current that we have.
Right. So
Different
if you look at my
materials
chart
would
again,
spike better.
you could actually see, and I need to play with the numbers enough to know exactly and say with confidence, but you could actually see where in your field, okay, based on these waveforms, okay, noticing that this is going to be the repeating pattern, small and then large, okay, you could actually see where in that waveform you would safely be. And it is, there's a zone where the energy is not in a canceled state. It's ambient. There's
Mhm.
zones here that, because of the formations that are occurring and how the cancellations are occurring, so to speak, as you want to call them, right? like you're in a zone where it's just ambient and the inertia around you and the inertia therefore you're subject to is canceled. Okay, because there's certain the whole top and bottom zones of this is like inertial cancellation, is what it boils down to. And if you look at these center zones where there's these couple of diamonds and then X's, I'm almost near certain that in those block zones, okay, and I'm not sure which ones yet. I need to again run the numbers and figure it. But there's going to be zones there that would represent where you would be in any one of these sorts of craft. You know, and everything else would go around you, and everything, you know, you'd be literally in the same zone that you're in, but everything around you and your environment is changed. So you're along for the ride. It's like being in a train, you know, like you could be in a train and if the tracks are good, this, that, the other thing, whatever, you know, you could be going 150 miles an hour and feel like you're sitting still. You know, you're in a bubble. You don't feel the wind, you don't feel the speed, you don't feel the acceleration because there is none as far as you're concerned in that case. It creates the same type of bubble for you.
Okay, I gotta say this, Joe, because I tried to say it to you before. I'm gonna say it again. Once you do the conversion and go one back on this, it'll show you the correct outline it's supposed to be in. Okay, and you just got to understand it for what it is. The red line needs to move back, okay, 2 squares, and then you have it. There's a reason why. The DC is heat in the center, their magnetism. The blue line is your outside eddy current, okay? Those are what creates the conditions of the actual RAV. They're between the sheet zones, right? But it doesn't look like they're lined up in your thing because it doesn't have the half back or the one back, right? And as soon as it does, it lines up because then it creates scalar and takes those diamond shapes and converts them into spheres. You see what I'm saying? It takes them from various shapes to a spherical shape while creating the one back when it aligns the fields properly in order to create the zone.
Think about
That's how energy works, though. But that's this is writing the numbers out. But then if you take how energy works, you'll see the field. It'll become very clear.
So the whole thing is back to the train example again. If you're in a train car, okay, and you jump in the train car, well, then you just jumped. It's the same as jumping in your room. Why? Well, resistance, right? The train car has eaten all of the resistance that would generally cause you to decelerate at a faster rate than it, even though it keeps going and you've stopped. So therefore, you travel with it the same as because it has eaten up all of the resistance around you. It's isolated you from the resistance that would otherwise cause you to lose momentum and stop. That's what inertia is because it's directly correlated to momentum. You know, if you're in something and it's canceling out the field, the environmental effect around you because it's literally warping it and shoving it around you because you've created the inverse of what it is in parallel, you know what I mean? And then came at it, it's going to warp around you. That's what it's going to do. That's what happens. It's what happens with the RAV. It's why there's no circuit. You get it? Why there's no circuit. You know,
I get it. What I'm just trying to show you the other way it works. And it's exactly like the RAV works because it's changing this schematic in a very important way. And you have to see it that way. That red line has to come back 2 squares to the left, and then it creates the 2 different lines that you need in order to have it. But then because of the scalar component, it comes out in a sphere. It's a component of an overall system. This gives you gravity is what we're looking at right now. This is going into gravity. Okay? This is measurement of everything you put there. I need to get to anti-gravity, so I need it to push back 2 squares to the left on the red line. Then I'll have the correct fields I need, and they'll change. And instead of this, they're going to look like a ramjet. Open up, come back, open up, come back, but in spheres. Okay?
It already is that, Nathan. That's already what this is.
It's not aligned properly, though.
Yes, it is.
No, it
It's
isn't.
poofing. It's going poof, 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 poof. Bigger,
Okay.
smaller, bigger, smaller, bigger, smaller. Those are
But it's not-
literally disc planes.
It's not aligned properly.
Okay.
This is gravitation. This is holding you down because of the way it is. It needs to go back 2 squares to get to anti-gravity.
All right.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree then. That's okay.
Well, I mean, no, that's not. I mean, I'm not necessarily disagreeing. I just haven't chewed on that yet. I mean, I agree that there's an out of phase component of it, but the out of phase component realistically boils down to the wave modulation. Once like the okay. So here's my theory. Let's talk theory for a second. Right. This is what I believe. Okay, and I'm confident to say. Okay. This is now theory. The ratios that exist, okay, have to be defeated probably by the remainder. Okay. So I still believe firmly that there's a inverse relationship, and I'm pretty sure it exists here, where the DC component is 0.666 and the AC component is 1.44. Now that sum of the whole, okay, is more than 2, but the sum of the whole is 2. So there's a remainder. So the remainder is the red dot. It's the gain. Okay, that's 1.6 or 0.16 rather. Okay, is the remainder. So that's your variable that you get to play with, because you get to have the whole, and you can modulate the remainder any way you want. So you could move that. Now, if you have this, okay, you have the equilibrium plus the remainder, the offset differential that you would need to overpower your ambient forces, okay? That would allow for the field bubble to occur and to push those ambient forces slipstream over top of you, making you disconnected locally. Now, where you modulate that remaining bit, that red dot at the top, and the blue dot that I didn't draw at the bottom, okay, where you modulate the axis of that, okay, would be your vector directional motion 3-dimensionally. Okay, so where you put that in relation to the central axis at that point, okay, is going to put you off a parallel. And as you well know, once you go off a parallel to this, that's where you go.
Okay, hang on. I'll show you what I'm looking at.
And that is there, and that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, so we just have a difference of opinion of what it looks like as you wrote it. I'm saying that if the red line comes back, it more matches what this looks like, is what I'm saying, versus the way that it's drawn.
So that's because you need to be able to see it dimensionally. If you drew it out 3-dimensionally, what you realize is you have rings and zones. And it's proportional rings and zones. And if you zoom in on this photo of it, you're going to see that the orangey yellow rings, okay, are the pinch in. Those are the smaller diameter. And then you have the flare out, the expansion event in between each. So it's in a pulse modulated state. And that's exactly what I see it. And that's what I was saying, is that I could literally draw rings and it looks like ring, space, ring, space, ring, space, ring. Now, where the space is, whatever's in that counter space is going to be expanding. See?
Okay. Well, that's the way it shows right here. I'm seeing it.
Mm-hmm. So
maybe-
that's exactly what that graph is showing, which is freaking awesome. And then what it's even showing is the central vectoring okay, which is the poofy bit in the middle. Now, I don't know if these are ramjets or scramjets that you're showing,
I'm
but
not sure.
but when you get to the scramjet mode, okay, which is very, very esoteric stuff, because to get that type of auto fuel combustion with it wide open, meaning that it's burning at the rate of everything coming in, it's just crazy to think with no moving parts. Okay. Um, it actually separates the rings because the acceleration becomes so great that you basically accordion it out, and the zones of expansion are able to expand into a state of diffusion where it's literally just going pop 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 pop. That's what it's doing, but it's doing it so rapidly in resonance, right? That maintain that rhythm of doing it. It's just in a constant state of explosion.
So I gotta ask the question, just correct me if I'm wrong. We know that eddy currents run a 90-degree difference or something like that of the actual regular energy, right? Of the magnetic. So we got a cross. Okay. So I'm going to ask you right there where they come up in the white in between them, are they forming the cross? Am I not seeing the dimension on your page the right way? Is what I'm asking. Like,
Are
do
they
you see the
forming
dimension as left to right, or is it there's one left to right and there's one cutting it?
Oh, it's totally a ring, and it's even a ring in the proper dimension to show
Like a target when you say
the
ring?
motion. So it's, if you look, it's literally swooping in one direction and then scrambling around. It's helical. You had two of them, and then the other one's just totally opposite of it, but it's not. It's mirrored. It's not totally flipped. So rather than it be inverse, it's just repeated in reverse, and that proportionally leads to, this is a caduceus cycle. It's cyclical. It's two things spinning around, but spinning around so fast that essentially it becomes a ring when you look at it from both sides. So you have two parts, and together they're forming a ring. And that's what I said earlier. They're actually closing off a plane, okay? A plane. And that plane has, but scalar potential that could actually run counter in a state of expansion. So it's in a state of expansion. That's your velocity for your thrust in that case, if that's how you want to look at it in that context.
Well, this was the best picture I could show to say what my point was. So,
yeah, and then think about what that does to the fields behind you and the differentials behind you to propel you forward. Even if it doesn't even have to thrust necessarily that way, because it could be an outward expansion. Okay. And just by the letting go of something in that outward expansion, that field expanding behind you pushes you forward. Like it does. That's how rockets work.
Well, it's like jumping frequency zones between each one of them. I can tell you they're different frequency zones based on how much energy is in each one.
Yeah.
Anyway. Thought that was interesting just to look at and ask the question. Trying to get it wrapped around in my head. Yeah, and they twist. He's right. They twist in between them. Like the candy wrapper. Remember I told you the penny, I keep wanting to say dollar. Probably the conversion rate now. It used to be a penny when I was a kid. There's the little cheap candies your grandpa has that are round, and then it twists, and then it comes out bigger on both sides. Those little penny candies. Back in the day, they're probably cost you like $10 right?
now. They look like a little strawberry. You go like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what that looks like. Every time. But by the way, that's the same thing Hutchinson did. Just in case you don't know this, what I call nodes is the energy that's in the center there that is created in between a Tesla coil and a magnetic field. Could be an eddy current field. Works the same way in this particular way. Okay? It's all aligned the same in it. And when he creates it, there's a node built. He's getting a vortex at the top, and the energy potentials go and twist around each other until you get to the tie, where it twists harder, and then it comes out again. He took the resonance frequency of a piece of metal, and then he took his frequency generator on his testicle and he matched it. And what happened was is the metal itself tore itself based on the vortex. It just ripped itself apart. Okay. And he did that by putting a node right in the dead center of it. And the reason it comes out in the center is the same reason it comes out in the center of a coil. It finds the center of its particular point in everything, okay? Its center point, and then it'll build out energy from there. What happens is the metal can't handle it, and it rips it right in half, okay? Melts down, rips in half, does everything he showed it did, but all he did was match the frequency of the particular metal that he was using. Now, could he have mixed metals and put them together and then knew the frequency? Well, it's the same way you do it in the Meg. You basically put the wire around it, you put it to your frequency generator, and it'll go to the radio points in it, it'll go to which way is the highest resonance frequency of it. You find that, you apply that to your coil, you put the node in there just by turning on your Tesla coil in a certain distance of it, and it'll shred the metal. Okay? That's exactly how that works. You can see it when you see the metal. You can see it when you build a coil and build a number 2 coil, and they don't have any connection to each other. And you see where the energy zones are and aren't, and why the particular metal tears apart. There is a zone in that metal it will not tear. There is 2 zones in the metal it will. That's how you know where the vortexes are and where they're not. Okay? That was Hutchinson. Okay, he does anti-gravity. I mean, I don't think anybody can question that. I've seen the videos. They're not fake. They're 100% real. The guy has anti-gravity, but he knows where the node is because he's played with Tesla coils. He was doing something the other day I was laughing at that I don't think a lot of people really understood. And he took a Tesla coil, okay, and you could see it wrapped, but he has a secondary wire wrapped around it. Now, I just want to get you guys' head around this. He's turning the field of the Tesla coil into AC, and he's taking at the very top an aluminum ring and letting it jump off the top. You can't do that with a normal Tesla coil. Just so we all understand this, the man knows what he's doing. He's showing you the conversion from a DC going into a Tesla coil to an AC field in the Tesla coil where it makes it jump off. Who did this before? Edwin Gray. That's the exact thing he did in the Edwin Gray. Okay? He knew how to convert it to AC. That's as simple as it gets. Hutchinson's a genius, man. So I thought I'd throw that out there because I saw the video and I don't think people understood it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, and I get it. And it was a different time also, especially when Hutchinson was doing most of his stuff. But, you know, it's a shame that the information and the understanding of it basically got hushed and swept under the rug and all this stuff because at the end of the day, it's, I mean, listen, the information isn't for everybody. The sad thing is, I mean, even though this is complicated to the point where it's the most complex subject matter that we could conceive of because it's so encompassing of everything, right? But it's so simple in what it is because once you see it for what it is, everything else you see how that falls into play, and that's how it all is because it's everything is all the same. And once you understand that there's energy and then there's matter, and the matter is just another form of energy. It's just like another state, of energy. Everything is the interaction between the two of them and the exchange between the two as they go through this transactional process of trying to fucking annihilate each other.
Yeah.
And matter is just trying to trap energy every which way it possibly can, by grabbing it as it comes to attack and then using it to form its own bonds, you know, and then you have energy endlessly trying to deplete matter of all of its energy potential and just deplete it and take away everything that it can and basically leave it in dust and ruins to the point where once all the energy potential is out of it, the energy could go away. The equilibrium has been reversed out of it because that's what matter is a form of equilibrium state.
Uh-huh.
It's a energy lock. So once you understand that the energy is everywhere and everywhere that the matter is, the energy manifests trying to fucking eat it. But it has been it's been like a futile process on both ends. Sometimes the energy wins, but sometimes the matter wins. And this is why you see the entropic exchange so readily there, is because it is everywhere. And in these blank zones that you see, they're very low entropy because, it's just been devoided out. Well, why would it be devoided out? Well, what have we said? If you look at the shapes of like spectrum map that they love to throw out there, which is hilarious to me because you can't even see most of the universe, and the sensor is just picking up like it's like taking a picture of the entire ocean with a goddamn iPhone and then saying, I figured it out. It's absolutely absurd. But I digress. Use what they have. What do you see? Well, you see that there's these clusters, and these clusters are matter clusters with the energy attacking the shit out of it. Okay. And then there's other clusters. Okay. And then these clusters of matter does what it does best, is be like, yo, we need to get the boys together. We need to get the army, muster the troops, and it comes together. And it clumps, and then it starts pulling other matter in, and then that creates more energy that has to come after it, and then it's creating these high entropic exchanges. And then through these high entropic exchanges, because after all it is just energy vectoring, well, what happens when the two same things cross, or the two different things cross, is they push out and away. So then you end up with these blank zones where there's neither going on. But guess what's there? Pure energy at rest. That's what exists there. Pure energy at rest. Because everywhere that matter is, energy is active. That's what it comes down to. Anywhere that matter is, energy is active, meaning that it's in an entropic state. What the fuck is an entropic state? It's a state of exchange. Most of the time, it's towards some state of equilibrium, a more mix. But guess what? The system doesn't like that, and matter sometimes wins. So what ends up happening is it starts hoarding up energy and then exchanging it with other energy depleted matter. Well, bang, now it's got a back door and it's accumulating. Well, that creates a void of the energy in the area, but that void is immediately filled by more energy. You see? So it's a never-ending battle, but the fact is that it does get reversed naturally too when you see it. And you can see where the separation is. There's areas of super low energy, density, and then super high energy density. And then there's a whole mishmash middle. The answer is, well, why is it so limited? Well, because super rare is it that it's so asymmetric, and then also put together in the right way that it could be separated out, like that. Is what it boils down to.
Hey, real quick, I just want to say thank you to Darren again. $50 sticker, man. Thank you very much, brother.
Holy smokes, dude.
Killing it.
Thank you, brother. That's awesome.
Totally
wow, we
cool,
must be doing something right, dude. I said that earlier when he sprung for the 10 memberships, but man.
Well, we're covering a lot of subjects actually that people talk about, and they probably, I don't think, understand as much as they should. You know what I mean? And I think we gloss over certain things when we talk because we do understand it. Like, we understand the Hutchinson effect. We understand planetary building. We understand You know what I mean? How the RAV works out and why we see the correlation faster than most people ever would is because we know that we're changing the environment, not the energy. And as soon as you change the environment, we already picked it up. We already knew before you even got anywhere. We knew. Okay, that's how I know every single time. And I'm sure Joe does the same thing. And then we see the energy and how it plays out, and then we see it on the bigger scale, and it's like, okay, but that's how it works. So if we wanted to,
Right. Right. The one thing that I said this earlier when we talked is the one thing that I refuse to look for is some kind of unified theory. Okay, because there's a couple reasons. Okay, it's first of all, if you seek the answer to everything, you get the answer to nothing.
that's right.
All right, and I think that that's the number one mistake that people who have these theories make is that they start to realize a lot, realize it's all connected, and then think that, then they seek out the missing parts. And what they find once they start to see the missing parts, it just comes naturally or not at all. So that's first and foremost. But secondly, is that it is very palatable because everything that we claim and we discuss can be explained by accepted physics. All right. We're not trying to be fringe, nothing. We started off that way, but that's because we ourselves didn't realize that the emergent effects, okay, are actually described in accepted work already, but just it's lacking context.
There's no context at all.
Right. But by then finding the context and then making the observation, following the math and the and the accepted laws brings you to all the same conclusions, and you start to realize quickly that nothing you believe is fringe. It's just simply organizing the laws and information in the proper order. It becomes Pulp Fiction. A story told out of sequence from 6 different perspectives, and you're supposed to understand what that movie's about the first time. The first time.
Let me just explain this as well. We just saw the jet making the little circles and stuff like that, right? But that's still resonant.
It's right. That's the only reason it works. That's why it needs a certain speed to do that.
But it's also the sound in there. It's harmonics. So it's not that they don't see it; they don't call it out for what it is. Like, I understand there's resonance in there. I understand there's harmonics in there, and I also know it's propulsion and it's a jet. Okay, I see the obvious. They don't name the obvious. Joe, you want to see something cool?
No.
No,
of course I knew.
Cool. Thanks for Joe.
Walk right in there.
This is a fog machine, and here's your high voltage.
Uh-huh.
Well, you can see when he turns it on.
From both sides. Oh, yeah. Well, they'll tell you that's ionic wind and, this and that. And, like that, some of that's not wrong.
Definitely ionic wind going on there to change the direction. I won't lie to you. That's what it is. But there's a reason the molecules are moving that way.
Oh, I know. Look. Yeah.
By the third time he shows you the button push on the high voltage, you should start to see an asymmetrical capacitor in the whole thing.
Well, there is, because in this exchange, did you see where the vortice occurred? Was right at 90 degrees to it, because it's creating the eddy current between it with the magnetism. Those eddy currents are creating the vortex. Because it's precursor to a magnetic field that doesn't have magnetic. It has a magnetic component, not a magnetic field at that stage. So, yeah.
The energy sparks in the first two, but fails to spark in the third. It's the difference between creating a spark gap and this right here. You see the asymmetrical capacitor create when the spark isn't going.
Now I know this is I know I showed you different, and I don't have the videos like readily available anymore, if at all. But I had taken multiple incense sticks, okay, and aligned them. And here's the nuance: I lit them of the same flame, okay, and allowed them to burn together, and then simultaneously blew both of them out, okay, and then put them into a not so dampened environment. So it was actually just in like clay, like wax or loose soil, that I stuck them in. And what they do is they stay parallel. And as long as they stay parallel, keep parallel, get it through your head. Very important. Keep on saying it, right? It must be important. Parallel. Well, they're parallel. And because they were lit with the same flame and they were blown out at the same time, they become entangled. What?
Don't do it again. There we go.
Entangled. And what are they? Well, they do exactly the same thing. The smoke does exactly the same thing. And it convects. Okay. And when it convects, it does exactly the same thing, opposite. Exactly the same thing, opposite. Exactly the same thing, opposite. All the way to the diffuse state when it starts to spread asymmetrically. And the crazy thing is that even when you go like this, like from one side, well, that would imply that would just knock the whole thing apart, right? Wouldn't it?
Uh-huh.
Well, yeah, you've influenced it by creating that breeze and it starts to go. And it stays together and it does exactly the same fucking thing as it's going away.
Yeah.
In both directions, even though you've changed its direction, okay, and its influence in the environment.
Okay.
It's entangled.
Let me.
It's crazy, but that's how that is because you introduced a large amount of energy into it from the same source at the same time, and then extinguished it from the same source at the same time, and they became motherfucking entangled.
Okay, hold
because
on.
they were part of the same energy exchange that reached them in a higher energy state than they initially were in. And that's the key. You see, because as soon as you put them out and they reach that same ambient energy level that they were at in the first place, the entanglement is actually gone, right? But if you're talking about in space and small particles where disturbing them becomes very difficult, as you know. It's very hard to change what type of energy something is, right? Or destroy it, let alone, right? Or reduce its energy state from its high state of energy potential, which is usually the context of entanglement, right? Well, this is a macroscopic version of that. This is wild to think. And all it is a shared source, a shared set of conditions. And then even when you separate them and pull them apart and stick them apart, they still do the same thing.
Yeah.
They still do the same. It's weird.
So I want to go back to this for a second, Joe, and show it. Okay. It takes more than AC and DC to create the field. Just watch it again. Okay, on the third one. There's no spark. It's influencing the air around it. Just understand this. Air is an energy state. Wind's an energy state. Okay? Because air is gases. Then we get to the wind, which is an energy state. The hot and cold between the two plates is an energy state. Okay? The whole thing is using every bit of energy to create the correct vortex when it doesn't spark over. When it doesn't spark over. That's the point. It's not so much the high voltage, it's the condition it creates around it. That's what an asymmetrical capacitor is. It's not so much about the voltage, because I'm sure the voltage right here is no more than 12 volts going in. Maybe he might get 16 volts, but I know this particular experiment, he isn't getting very much voltage.
Well, the reason that the influence of the vortex is occurring while the arc is not, is because the energy has stabilized into the saturation level in the vapor itself. So the resistance is less once the energy state is achieved, and so it acts cathodically in that context. So because it has then something to exchange, because it's charged, okay, it's able to then interact with the higher density energy density output, and it'll go into that state of exchange. And in this case, when you saw it go into the state of exchange, the vortex formed, and it formed where? Intermediately between the anode and the cathode part of the reaction. You see? It formed centric of that, because that was the equilibrium state forming between the two.
Okay, here's what I want to get to. We've all seen this field in air like this in an experiment that has to do
There's an eddy current for you right there.
Okay.
Before the vortex.
There's
an eddy current.
Okay. We've seen this though. Okay. I just want to explain this. We've seen this in air just like this when they did this in the 1950s. Okay. Do you remember they created that Avro car? And in order to show the Avro car, they showed the fog and how it rotates and goes around things. And people say, oh, anti-gravity craft, and they draw these little circles underneath it. This is upside down of that, okay? It shows the little circles, right? And they'll go, oh, it creates a donut in the bottom, and in the top, it's like a teardrop, okay? They do this all day long, and nobody's putting together why. It's because they saw the asymmetrical capacitor. Oh, the eddy current, right? Show them where the eddy current is, Joe.
It's swooping right into your bottom left. But it's also on the other side too, starting to form. But then you see it bringing it in. Now, what's important to realize here is what I mentioned now several times throughout this episode, okay, which is the Kelvin-Helmholtz effect, okay? Because what happens is shearing or pinching or whatever you want to call it, but it's really shearing. It's wave shearing, okay? Well, when that little guy twists around from that eddy current like that, okay, it's actually trapping something in it, okay? If it continues to twirl and twist and its vector is going both this way and that way, okay, it will disconnect entirely, all right? And then you will have your ball. What does it sound like? Well, it's exactly why, because it shears. And you can see that it's parabolic.
Mm-hmm. But you also got to remember, this is a flat plate. This is not a sphere. If it was a sphere, then you'd see that same vortex you see on the top on the bottom. But it's not, because the geometry and, I should say, the environmental condition is different. That's the only difference in this. If you just got to remind yourself, what am I looking at versus what do you think it is? Well, if you say magnetosphere, just remember you have to have a ball in the center. If you don't have a ball in the center, it's not going to look like a magnetosphere. But if you put a flat plate in there, it's going to work on the eddy currents going in the plate. Okay?
Well, you got to remember that there's also a magnetic component, which I've described now multiple times, where you have, first of all, you have a one-dimensional current, okay, that's interacting with the two-dimensional plane surface in a diffuse state, okay, that's round, and it's going to have a rotational, a rotation around the plane. So it's already got that going for it. And then you have, because the two fields are coming into contact, it's attempting to build that third dimension of that magnetic field. And that's what you're seeing in the vortex, is literally the one-dimensional interacting with the two-dimensional, trying to up the dimensionality one more to a three-dimensional magnetic component, okay, before it could pinch off and then collapse into the sphere, right? Which is then your, four-dimensional, magnetic field. It's the traditional magnetic geometries.
All right, Joe. You want to see another one?
Let's go.
Okay. Oh, I love this. Okay. Is it showing it? Yeah. You remember the rock? That cool looking rock?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to see some Rav to the rock?
That's why I showed you the rock. So let's go.
Okay. I know this doesn't look like much, but it'll make sense in a minute. This is where the Rav would create between the anode to a glass bottom stick to a cathode. Okay. This is what happens in there. And you see it, it just looks like a mush, right? But that's not exactly what's going on here. Let's see if I have it in the right arrangement. Nope,
Right.
that's not
It's
the right arrangement.
dendritic, but that, if it were to accumulate further, would become what they consider a botryoidal crystal formation. Okay. So those dendrites, if they're going to build up like that, they'll turn into bubbles themselves, emulating what it like the reaction and the fields that are causing them. And then it becomes a botryoid. And that's what you're seeing. And it's important to know that dendrites only form when crystals are bonding in their lowest energy state. Okay, so they're able to bond, but they're bonding in their lowest energy state because that's the most simplistic lattice for them, the most efficient lattice, I should say, for them to create. Okay, if the energy, the electrons to glue them together, okay, are very limited. So what does that tell us? Well, that tells us what we already knew. The low energy state accumulation is on the cathode side.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to show here, and I'm doing a poor job. You see the two things that look like snowflakes. We saw the fractal snow. That's the same thing going on here. When you look at it, all these things are snow, right? But they're all fractals in what comes out in it, and it looks like this. This is what it looks like in glass. And when you get in there up close, here's how it's created. It works its way down and creates fractals. You wonder why.
It's going up and down. So what is occurring is what we discussed earlier, which we haven't mentioned in this episode. So there's this modulation that occurs cymatically with the arrangement of the molecules, in the equilibrium zone. But because there's a fluctuation, okay, well, imagine it like this, right? It's arranged, but then it lifts. And when it offsets, the differential changes in that pulse, in the pulse rate, okay? Higher energy state enters and solidifies the crystallization, but then presses out. And then it arranges again, but it's a repeating pattern of basically switching back and forth between a lower energy cymatic state and then a higher energy cymatic state where the pieces are arranging and they're arranging fractally in that nature. So it's actually locking in the crystal structure based on that beat frequency.
Yeah. So I just thought it was kind of cool because it's same fractal snow, but in glass it shows it different. You know what I mean? And this right here is verified science, by the way. That this is not fringe in any means. They have plenty of tests to back this up, and I'll share the name with you later, Joe.
Yeah, and most of those tests are done under inert gas and or vacuum.
Yeah.
I've seen.
Well, then you already know. Okay.
So yeah, I'm familiar, but again, that's been the spectacular thing about Rav all along. Is
There's
it's
an
not
open
that
air.
it's doing anything that's necessarily not been done. It's just doing it in the way they said could never be done. Oh, that's cool. You know what I mean? They said,
Yeah.
oh, well, yeah, that exists, but you need these extreme and difficult to achieve conditions.
Nope.
And this thing said, no, you don't, because Maxwell said that there was this unknown entity that is able to create these divisions
Yeah.
and separate it all out and do it logically and rearrange it as needed and etc. Maxwell said it, and physicists have struggled with it because they knew that if Maxwell's demon, as they called it, not him, okay,
Yeah.
if Maxwell's demon existed, that means that the law of thermodynamics is out the window. And what that realistically means is that it's, you know, that all their formulas have to go out the window too. And even though they knew that it was scientifically plausible based on their own science, they conveniently dismissed it because of convenience.
Oh.
Because explaining it would fuck up everything else that they said. So just shove it to the side, sweep it under the rug, and just like nobody talk about it.
Well, okay. Let me just tell you, it was out a long time ago. As soon as we saw the Bedini spike, people didn't realize what they're looking at. You want over unity, it's a Bedini spike. The problem is you got to create it up and down the whole way, all the way down. Okay? But you can only do that with a piezo disc because it doubles the amount of electricity in it. Okay? But what is it doing it on? It's doing it on the eddy current side. That's the problem. We're not putting it together. It's the opposite of the magnetic field. That's why it's spiking. That's why it's compressed. That's why it goes up and down so fast. That's why we got double the energy out of it. That's why they conveniently do not understand negative energy. They conveniently do not understand it's cold. And they conveniently keep it out because it will ruin their equation. That's why it's all based on hot energy.
Yeah, and that's why to ignore the pulse, the pulse spikes in the waveform that I just drew too, because
Yeah.
none of it makes sense, because it's here you have this continuing waveform totally ready to be used for whatever, but you have this excess constantly occurring.
Yeah.
So, well, it can't just be, you know, free lunch, so just move on, I guess.
But
Well,
it's
no,
not free lunch.
it's not an emergent event.
It's pulling in the energy of the atmosphere around it. I mean, you just got to understand it a different way. It's aligning fields. It's taking the cross and aligning them. And that's how you get your spike, because it's not canceling. It's addition. You see, when you align the fields, it's addition. It's not canceling like they want to say it all the time. They go, oh, no, don't worry about that. It's canceling. No. It's adding to it. That's the problem. Because there's two different energies acting in one type of energy once they're aligned. That's the difference. That's why it does go over unity, but it's not anything out of physics.
No.
It's just they mislabeled it.
So check this out. So the over unity from the chart, okay? And I need to again look at the chart closer, I admit. Okay, but what it looks like at just a glance, okay, just, and these are all proportions, remember, right? So if where this waveform is out of phase, okay, the sum of the maximum amplitude of that particular waveform emergent of the DC pulses, okay, the extra DC pulses, okay, the total amplitude is 5/9. Okay, so that's the amplitude of that 180 degree out of phase node and anti-node intersection is 5/9. Okay, the proportion of those other two, okay, would be 4/9. Okay. So the whole point is that this is only two half waveforms. Okay. But the sum of the two is the whole. Okay, in the amplitude. Then when you look at the frequency of it, it occurs at a much higher frequency between the two pulses. Okay, like I said, boom, boom, like that, right? With a big pause in between. All right. So, that if you're looking at it as like a voltage and amps equals watts type thing, you're looking at a pretty big number because of how much is moved, how fast, right? Work over time. So the work over time is huge, and then it's vast in comparison, and it's extra and doesn't take away from the main waveform. Pretty freaking cool. And it's right there on the graph. Graphs out perfect. Does exactly what we think it ought to. Creates exactly what we think it ought to.
Mic's off. Nice. Sorry.
Oh, Victor's here. Yo, Victor,
Yep.
man, you're gonna love my chart, man. You're gonna have a fucking field day with that
Yeah.
thing, dude.
Well, Eighth was saying it takes more than one level of ring or sphere, and it does. There's no question about that. We've been over this probably a million times, going back and forth with Sean with what each layer is and how it builds out between the sheath layer, which one's the speed layer in it, you know what I mean, and which one they create. So he's absolutely right, but we're just trying to do it in a more general sense than what people would, you know what I mean? So everybody understands it. But there's absolutely field zones in everything that we do. So,
Hold on. Ian says, Joe, that sounds like a heartbeat. Okay,
oh yeah.
and you're right. It does sound like a heartbeat, but you know what's even crazier about it is that you have to remember that beat is emergent of the other two DC pulses. Okay, so it's exactly like a heartbeat because your heart has 4 chambers. So you have 4 things working with the pulse of 2 being, one sucking in, one pushing out, one sucking in. That's why you get the boom boom from a 4-chamber heart. And it's the same thing here. You have 4 DC pulses, the first 2 being mechanism of the second. But it's really the 2 at the top and the bottom that you're actually getting, because those are the large events. So it's, yeah, very, very, like I said, it's nature does this.
Yeah.
Things
it does
do
it
that.
repeatedly.
Yeah, things do that.
I love that. I gotta fix. I gotta get a new shirt. Things
Things
do
do
that. I gotta have a picture of the Rav on it. That's just gotta have. Things do that. Oh
Well,
man.
we only thought that things didn't do that before we understood. Then we realized, nope, things do that.
Yeah. So I'll leave it alone. Okay. I think the Graviflyer, guys, for as much as some people hate it and some people love it, it's an experiment to see if things work. We can all sit on our hands and listen to physics all day, but it takes someone to get out there and push these things to their limits to find out the answer. It's the same thing as Project Rav when we do it with Sean. It's what's the limits of it? We all hear it, ball lightning. Oh my God, we got a plasmoid. Well, what we're showing in the Rav is there's more to it, and it's easier to make. And by the way, it's the easiest way of fusion ever. I think this is what people misunderstand about projects like this. They come in and say, "Oh, that's a fission rod. Oh, there's a whole thing underneath it." Yeah, but did you even explore the science of it? did you push it to its limit? Did you find out everything that it has to offer you? Because if you didn't, then you didn't do your job. You have no right to come in and say those things without that. That's the point. That's why we do it. So that as we do it, you learn, like we see the fields being created, we track them back to their source and find out what they are, and then we see if it's plausible. You see, the Graviflyer might not have all the answers, but if it has 90% of the answers, who am I to turn a blind eye? Okay, 90% is good. I can build 10%. That means that 90% of the work's done, and I just have to figure out the last 10. I'm okay with that. Okay, if the RAV is just simply a ball of energy, how does energy work? How does it flow? How do we build things? Is it a light feature? Is it not a light feature? Does light turn into matter? Does plasma turn into some kind of crystalline form? And when you start realizing those things, you go, oh my God, what do we have on our hands here? We just discovered something that creates an energy environment, and it drives you nuts why it does it. I got to put that out there because I just want to make sure people understand. If we took on all these projects by saying, I'm going to fail, then you're going to fail. If you took it on with the open mind saying, I just want to learn what it has to tell me, and I'm going to do everything in my power to give it every opportunity to show me that, then I think you're on the right track. That's why we show these experiments. Part of my experiment builds a field bubble. Well, hey, if that's all that the Graviflyer showed me, I'm happy with that. I can now build the RAV from the inside out, and then now I can build the RAV from the outside in. I'm pretty freaking happy with that. I don't know who else can build the field bubble. You know what I mean? How many people could say I could build an energy field bubble?
Me,
not very
old
many.
man builds Coil.
I'm just saying, guys, it's out there. The understanding is way beyond what you think it is. It's what can I get from all of them combined? That's why we continue to do the experiments. Because even if I don't break it, somebody in the future might, just on any part of the conversation I had or anything I did. It might just do it. Same thing with Joe. It just might. Something that Joe said might have triggered them, and boom, they got their last 10%. And we're over the finish line all together as people, and I'm pretty freaking happy about that.
That's right. Any part that we could play is is a big one. And sometimes, we know things. It's like Victor said, right? And what did he say? It was one of the best lines I've ever heard. He's like,
I knew things I didn't know I knew.
You're right. I didn't even know what I knew. Exactly. Right.
That was a perfect line.
It is right. It is the perfect line because that's exactly what it is. It's like, you know these things, but you don't know what it means. And sometimes you think you do. But then when you actually do or get closer to it, let's say, you're like, oh my God, I had no idea what I was saying. I knew, but I didn't know why I knew. And I didn't know what it did or how to apply it or anything, but it's coming to focus. Okay, cool. And it's just being aware of all these little things that makes you look at the things around you. And the more you do that and you care to understand, you'll see it everywhere. And that's the beauty of it. It actually gives you a nice, positive, and good reason to look at mundane things and be like, you know what? Not too bad. Very cool. It's good. Changes your whole perspective.
Oh yeah. I just wanted to say that because I know there's a lot of naysayers, and trust me, I hear it all the time, and I get kind of down, and I think, oh my God, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. You know what I mean? And then again, I think I'm retired, I'm old, I'm in my garage, and I don't give a shit. And I'm just going to do it anyway. And that's the parallel I get into every day, just so you know. I get hate mail, and then I say, fuck it, I'm just going to do my own thing. And I just don't care at that point. And then I start tinkering with it, and I find cool stuff. And I show it with everybody on the internet. And then Joe and I discuss it and come up with cool theories and how things work, and it just seems to work out. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, I'm not a physicist, I'm not an engineer, and I don't need to be either one. I just need to show the work.
Yeah. I did ask Nathan, though. I said, well, what stage of this are we like nuclear physicists? I said, there's got to be a stage. There's like got to be a threshold where it's like, oh yeah, Joe and Nathan, the nuclear physicist. You know, I mean, I might talk about analingus and rusty trombones and all, but like, listen, I'm this doesn't mean I'm not serious or good at what I do. It's like, but at what point, seriously, is it when this all gets realized and MIT says, you know what, we want to further this research using your work, so it's like, well, but we got to give credit to you, and you're just two dumbasses. So if you're hung this on your wall, so it looks like, you know what I mean? Like, is that how we do this?
Joe and I will have a sign, dumbass 1 and dumbass 2, and we're over there getting our cap and gown on, going to. Yeah. That'd be great. That's hilarious.
What I'm saying. Right. Because if they want their grant money from the government, they're going to have to show somebody with credentials. Not two dumbasses. They'll just use us as proxies, just like they'll use somebody else's proxies and just rip our work off. I was going to name names. I'm not going to name names. Don't do that. Not nice.
You know what? I always said this, Joe. Where are my credentials? I said they're on my ass. So if we ever do get those fake degrees, okay, I'm gonna have to put this in a, you know what I mean? It is a big fucking stamp, a tattoo or something.
Well, really, okay. Let's play a little fun hypothetical here for a second, okay? Joe and Nathan cracked the inner workings of the universe, okay? Yes, the work is going to be stolen. But at that point, it's the people that cracked the inner workings of the universe and then documented it all over the internet for years prior to anybody else actually figuring it out. I'll sit there, I'll put myself a degree, okay, right on the wall, and it's going to mean more than any university would ever want to give me credentials. And the credentials are whatever I say they are, and I can make them up because I made all this up and I was right in the first place. So if I want to say that there's something higher than a PhD doctor physicist, then I'm it. Then at that point, it's true. And, that's the wonderful thing about delusion and reality. Because if you're delusional, it becomes your reality. You see?
Robert here says, no, we're wrong. We have a fellow dumbass in the audience with us. He's got number 1, so we're 2 and 3. And then hold on. Somebody else said it too up here.
Oh yeah, dead fish.
Right here, we gotta make room for dead fish in there. So we're all in there. We're like what is that, Doctor Who or Doctor?
No. You know what? The next contest we have, one of the prizes will be, I will give you a degree. It's gonna be an FUD. Okay. Yeah, a fuck you doctor, okay? A fuck you doctorate, all right? And it's gonna say your name, comma, FUD. All right. And then that's it. That's what we'll do.
I'm there with you, Joe.
Yeah, I will make it. It'll be nice. Very nice.
Very nice, very proper, look like a scroll. Yeah.
Cut a little ribbon. You have one of those.
Oh my God, dude. That's so funny, man. We all line up in the thing. It was not Doctor Who, it was Dr. Seuss. You know what I mean? Thing 1, thing 2, thing. You know what I mean? That's what we are. We're all in a big circle. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we'll just have to spell doctor backwards, because that's what the RAV does anyway. That's a cycle. So if they're a doctor and they're half, then we're whatever that is. I don't know.
We'll go back and correct it.
Rock odd. We're rock odds.
Yeah, we'll create time travel so that this self can go back and tell our younger selves to get the right degree so that we're taken seriously later, right? And we'll give ourselves the only information. We'll break the whole, what was it, Back to the Future thing, we'll talk to all of our old selves and get us the right answers. And then time capsule shoot us.
Then we go do that, and the government intercepts us in the 4th dimension. They're like, guys, what is your body doing here? You were supposed to only be here like in consciousness only, and then we ignore you. But as soon as your physical body planes over here and you're not dead, I'm sorry, but you're coming with us. And then you realize something real quickly, that where you were is upside down of where you are, and there's little snowflakey things falling, and yeah.
We're so
Season
screwed.
part 2, season 5 coming Christmas.
I love it. Oh, we gotta take a camera with us and make sure we show the whole time episode of where we're going in time. That would be amazing. What's up, Bernie?
So I was just listening, and personally, I self-identify as a nuclear electrochemist. So it is what it is. That's what we're working in. That's what we.
I mean, hell, if Ashton Forbes is the premier #1 physicist in the world, according to himself, I mean, I gotta be something.
Well, yeah,
Right?
we all got to get in on that action. I don't know how he got that title, but I need to get me
He
some
gave
of
it to
that title
himself.
action.
He said it.
He just gave it to himself.
It's just self-identification, right? You can self-identify as a transgender whale, male, whatever the hell you want these days, right? It's like, this is what it is.
We live in the United States, where we undid that at the beginning of this year.
Oh,
Well, you can still self-identify as a nuclear dolphin Martian, right? Like, you just have to have blue hair or work for the government.
dude. Okay, we self-identify as doctors and physicists. That's the way we are, and nuclear scientists like Bernie over here. Okay, we're all in. Okay, we all self-identified already.
I told you, I'm gonna make a diploma with so many credentials on it, but they're all gonna be. It's gonna be like retard extraordinaire, know nothing supreme. Like.
Oh my God, I love it.
Make them a whole wall of them.
So, Joe self-identifies as an idiot. I self-identify as a nuclear electrochemist, but we both are nuclear electro engineers, right?
Hey, Bernie, I self-identify as the guy that took the spiral mathematics and then mapped it out in a different way, and then inverted it, charted it, and then measured all the proportions and ratios.
So you're on an inverted spiral, is what you're saying.
You see? See what I got done there?
I see that.
That's all the relationships that exist. That's
the existences of existences.
Exactly.
I self-identify as old. You know what I mean?
Man.
That was my self-identification.
Hey, that's almost allowed. All right, young man. All right. Jeez.
Oh man, I'm gonna feel old. I'm gonna hit 50 soon.
Oh God, you're in your 40s?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Fuck,
yeah.
I'm 40, man. Does that mean I'm an old man? Shit.
Oh man, we got time to catch up. We're Joe and I are gonna slow down time here for us, but you'll keep going forward, so we'll meet you in the middle.
Hey now. I'd say speak for only yourselves, but you're also I'm speaking for myself. I'm slowing down now.
Oh, don't you? Hey, you're not drinking anything else with that today, are you?
What? You want a little? Hey.
Oh, that's better than last time. Last stream you came on, you were putting it with some good liquor, and then.
Yeah, I don't usually drink, and when I do, I get hammered real quick, so I pass out and don't embarrass myself too much.
Yeah, dude, 3, and you were done. You were a totally cheap date.
Right? I have a very cheap date. Very cheap.
Yeah, those mono comments went straight to your head, dude.
That's why I don't drink.
Oh, that's hilarious, man.
Oh, I've heard that one before.
Yeah, but
it's never good. It's never, whatever follows is never good.
Yeah.
Well, those
Dude.
people are usually in self-denial. I actually don't drink because I do become retarded, and I self-identify as a genius for the most part. So it's very retarded to get drunk for me. So I really, really try not to. But
Oh man, I love it. That's all good,
exactly.
man.
All right, but actually, I also self-identify as a retard. What the fuck are these people doing?
They might be retarded too.
They definitely are. They're driving around. Oh, finally they closed their door. I don't know. That was an open door for a while. Anywho, I'm just on the east side of the road, driving back from Canmore. Pulled over for a minute to talk to y'all, but we'll see you in a half hour or so if you are going to join on League of Extraordinary Adventures. And
Right
much love,
on.
my friends.
We'll see you there, brother.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
man. Catch you later.